Edwards rotates in at the back. He's got the football. Bumps into traffic and escapes. Donovan Edwards racing to the end zone. Michigan flexing immediately.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
First play fake, Green, over the middle, has a receiver, Traylon Ray, first play, Mountaineers!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
And trying maybe to put this game away right now. Second down and goal, 13th play of the drive. Cook to the air, into the end zone, caught. And there's Luther Burden. Touchdown, Missouri.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
They stack the line of scrimmage. Fafita rolls, fires on the run. What a throw and catch. Cowering down the sideline. He is in. Touchdown, Arizona.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Dart fires wide open. Prescorn. Touchdown, Rebels.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
From the shotgun. That throw's intercepted. Pierce down the sideline. Touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Well, good afternoon on this Monday. Martin Luther King Day, January 15th, 2024, right across the street from where we are on what is, of course, MLK. And also Elm Washington Bridge in Waco is a shrine with Martin Luther King. It's the Martin Luther King Bridge right next to it. Good afternoon. We are here. It is cold in a lot of places. Here's what it was earlier this morning. 1 degree wind chill, which is nothing like Buffalo, which was nothing like Saturday night in Kansas City, but that's what it was like earlier, 8 o'clock this morning in Waco, Texas. Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. We will at some point get to the Cowboys disaster, but a lot of news when it comes to, of course, college football, most of it about coaches. But here's one, and yes, the Bills and Steelers about to kick off in the Snow Bowl in Buffalo in Orchard Park. Here is from earlier today, Caleb Williams, and this was like an hour ago. Today's the deadline for underclassmen declaring for the NFL draft. This is not a surprise. There were thoughts that he wants to hold it up to make sure who could draft him or, well, the first pick in the draft is Chicago. Is that right?
Yep.
And would they draft him? Did he want to play that Eli Manning game? There's no surprise here. He will be one of the top, if not the top pick in the draft.
Yeah, he's either going to go to Chicago, a team that Chicago trades the pick for, or Washington. Those are the two places but I think he's probably going to go to Chicago. I think that they're going to probably wind up trading Justin Fields, which is, he played well down the stretch of the season, but Caleb Williams, I'm a little surprised that it just took this long, but I guess waiting to see and then kind of figuring out who's going to be where and do you want to be in Chicago? Look, part of it, I know there's only 32 of those jobs, but Chicago is not really a bastion of quarterback success for whatever reasons you want to say. So, the people look at that. There's not been, the best quarterback in Chicago history. Sid Luckman played when he could smoke a cigarette on the sidelines. So it's
next to Lynn Dawson. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a long time since they've had a truly great quarterback in the Windy City. But if he winds up there, look, sometimes you just got to trust your talent, which he's got immense levels of it. And he's kind of what the modern NFL is going to quarterback wise. So not a surprise here.
Yeah, just surprising that it took this long. And then again, maybe that was just making sure that what you wanted to get in the end as far as your draft desires were guaranteed to some degree behind the scenes. Don't know. Do know he's a Washington, D.C. guy. So if he were to not get drafted by the Bears, he could be there leading the charge for this brand new ownership group that is in charge of the Washington Commanders and part of his hometown, team being able to maybe turn the corner. And I think that would be appealing to most people, maybe not to Caleb Williams, not quite sure where his head is at. And almost feels like he waited this long. And certainly you can understand where people think it's an attention thing with him. But there's a lot of opinions on Caleb Williams. The one thing that I think everybody can agree upon is that he is a tremendous football player. So, yeah, Chicago, I'm sure, has eyes on him and would love to sink their teeth into him as their new starting quarterback. Same thing for the Washington Commanders, although they've got a lot of areas to address. So, that'll be interesting to see. But no surprise that he's in the draft as the guy who's long been rumored to be the top pick.
See what possible behind the scenes, but there's a long way between now and the draft. He's already started working out. He made the official declaration to enter earlier today. Meanwhile, in college football news, outside of Caleb Williams, and Cole Cubelic will join us from ESPN and the SEC Network in about 8 or 9 minutes. Jedd Fisch, the carousel continues. The merry-go-round continues. The hamster wheel continues. He now is the head coach at Washington. His offensive coordinator, Brendan Carroll, among others, are on their way into Seattle to meet with the team. Jedd Fisch, so DeBoer to Alabama, Fisch to Washington, and now the University of Arizona coming off a really good year. They are the next team on the clock.
Yeah, I think the most interesting part of this trifecta of coaching changes here is not Jedd Fisch to Washington, where I think he'll be successful because I think he's a really good coach. I think Kalen DeBoer will do fine at Alabama. I mean, I think his biggest challenge is going to be when people realize that, the greatest coach that ever lived is you can't just replicate that again. And then for Arizona, though, this is the first time they've made a head coaching hire that's really hit in a very, very, very long time.
Since Dick Tomei?
Yeah, so they've had such a long time between what are successful runs by a head coach, and this is only a 1 year, getting into a bowl game, but he built the program to something, and the way that it works now, I mean, it wouldn't shock anybody to see Noah Fafita and a few other players follow him to Washington because players commit to the coach, not the university anymore for the most part. And he's on his way to Washington. They have a whole roster to fill. And starting with Noah Fafita is a great start. And for Arizona, as you come into this uncertain era of a new conference and they've got some financial shortfalls and different things, which is kind of what led to their push to get a decision out of the Pac-12. You haven't done this really well in a long time, and the wide open nature of the Big 12, it just there's a lot of uncertain territory here for the Wildcats.
Well, it's a bummer for Arizona. They were starting to really get some nice, fun football going on, and it's been a little while for them to be as proud as they were this past season about their football program, be as excited about the future of their football program as they were coming off of the big bowl win over Oklahoma and the finish that they had. So a really nice ending there at Arizona, but you didn't want it to be the ending if you were Arizona fans, and unfortunately this is just part of the deal. And Washington was going to be able to kind of pick and choose who they wanted, and Jedd Fisch was just a logical candidate given the resume and given the success that he's had in Tucson. So, yeah, not surprised at all to see him be the guy tabbed for Washington. He's a really good coach. Excited to see what he's going to do there as they make their big transition to the Big Ten, but it is a bummer in a variety of different ways for Arizona, including the fact that they're about to make their way into the Big 12, and you go from what was arguably set to be maybe one of the favorites in the conference next season to just in complete shambles, honestly. I mean, you're going to lose probably most of your best players. Saw Jonah Coleman's in the portal now. Various others will trickle into there, and I'm sure McMillan and Fafita will be a part of that. And if not, then what a pleasant surprise that would be, but that's probably going to be the case. And so, yeah, it's a bad timing for Arizona. It was never going to be good timing because you felt like you had the guy that was going to make you relevant and keep you excited. So whenever you lost him was going to be bad. But the double whammy now, though, of moving on to a new conference and having to deal with all of the things that are going to come with having to now replace your coach. So that's awful news for Arizona. Now see what they do, but it's not going to be splashy, not with all of the rumored, budget shortfalls and things like that. But it is something that they're now going to have to move quickly, just like the dominoes keep trickling down, and now it's their turn. But, yeah, that's a bummer for Arizona, and I think that's a solid hire for Washington.
And by speaking to Jonah Coleman, Craig, here's Jonah Coleman earlier announcing that I love you, Tucson, forever. He had a pretty good year last year at Arizona, had nearly 900 yards, good player. He's now in the portal. Maybe he ends up in Seattle. All right, we got a couple of things to get to, including, you don't have to show the statement, but Ryan Grubb obviously is in Alabama to be a part of the same staff with Caleb DeBoer. Here's an interesting twist. Alabama's defensive backs coach, Travaris Robinson, one of the best recruiters on a staff that dominates in recruiting, is at Georgia. He spoke with DeBoer. Apparently what he wanted was not available. Kirby Smart with the dagger hires Travaris Robinson, gets the co-defensive coordinator position, and I'm sure a raise. Then Alabama tries to go back and get him to come back to Tuscaloosa. There's the story from Matt Zenitz and others. He is not leaving Georgia. Alabama had him. He left. They're going to keep him with the Bulldogs and Kirby Smart.
Yeah, that's a big hire. You know, Kirby Smart just sitting there waiting. Like, he's the one, like, at the top, like, of the people who have the first chance at the Alabama buffet. Kirby Smart appears to be the one that has the first spot in line. And this is a huge thing because, like you said, he's a tremendous recruiter. And Caleb Downs is kind of unsure of what he wants to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of late, just like a bunch saying that he has still not yet made up his mind, but he will be front and center.
But he's a defensive back, and what did Travaris Robinson coach? The defensive back. So those things all kind of go in together.
And Isaiah Bond, the receiver from Alabama, officially now is headed towards the University of Texas. Craig?
Yeah, that almost seemed like that was already set up before the Saban thing as quickly as that moved. But regardless, that's a nice pickup for Texas, and you were going to lose some guys to the transfer portal regardless, but now the doors are wide open for the next month, and the Vultures are circling, and they're going to start to pick apart that Alabama roster, and we'll see what Kalen DeBoer can do to try and stem that off. But that's going to be a big part of his first few days and weeks on the job, is just trying to get that roster and his staff in order. But yeah, there's a little bit of weakness in that Alabama, program for the first time in a long time, right? Where the defenses are down a little bit. So it's going to be, fascinating to see what they stave off and what others are able to come in there and grab away from them, and then kind of what's left standing to look at afterwards. But yeah, that's a very interesting hire, Kalen DeBoer. I think it's going to be really fun to see what he does, and just the unknown now with a post-Saban Alabama is just, that's just so interesting, right? Because we've known this one thing to be true and solid for 20-plus years, and now it's just a complete crapshoot. Even if you did hire a really good head coach, which is what you did, who's won everywhere, which is what he's done, it's still just so wildly different. So, yeah, I'm so intrigued by what this looks like moving forward.
There's so much more. And, again, the domino effect. And Softy from, of course, KJR in Seattle will join us. He had a pretty bad stretch, but now we'll get into the Jedd Fisch hire. And he has an interesting idea about how to maybe calm down some of the carousel when it comes to making more money available to the players, that even if a coach leaves, it could slow that process down. Not that the players don't need and get and deserve and have earned the kind of money they're going to get now and what they're about to get even more of. Also, he on Jedd Fisch, on the hiring of Jedd Fisch, what was his choice, or who would have been his top choice once DeBoer took the decision to move on to Alabama? We will, again, get into what happened in the NFL, including a game that's about to kick off in a little bit, the Bills and Steelers. And do you have the picture of the stadium? This was a game that was supposed to be played yesterday. These are the stands. This is where Buffalo is playing, and they've cleared off the field. That's where the game is going to be played. But they've been able to clear some of the aisles, but not the actual seats for the Bills game today against another team that understands weather like that in the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, that's just wild. They're built different up there. That is not my type of scene at all, because I'm anti-cold weather, and shoot, we're having a hard enough time with barely even a frost here, so I can't even imagine. But those folks were born in it and built in it, and they know how to thrive in it as well. And so, yeah, they tried their best, it seemed like, but that was too much even for hundreds of Buffaloans to try and clear all that out in time. So, yeah, they've got it good, and now the game's about to get rolling. So, yeah, that should be fun.
Cole Cubelic, SEC Network, but ESPN as well, joins us on 365 Sports. We're going to allow him to be able to get the kickoff of the Bills game against the Steelers. Cole, do you remember the coldest game or a snow game that you played in?
Coldest game I played in was the Iron Bowl in 2000. That was at Bryant-Denny Stadium. It was in the 20s. We had sleet, not real snow, but it was sleeting the entire game. So that was easily the coldest one I played in.
How much of the loss of Travaris Robinson hurts Alabama?
I think a lot of it depends on who is next up on that side of the football for Alabama. He is an elite recruiter. He's a guy that knows that scheme, knows that defense. He's obviously worked under Kevin Steele. He's worked under Will Muschamp. He's worked under Nick Saban. So it's all the same tree. He knows that scheme as well as anybody. I think he had a pretty heavy hand in helping out with play calling last year for Alabama's defense. He's also a good special teams coach. He's great with punt returners. But it's the recruiting prowess, the pipeline to South Florida that he brings, it's going to hurt. It's hard to say exactly how much it's going to ding Alabama because you don't know who else they're going to be able to get in. But there's not a lot like T-Rob for sure. I know that.
What is Kalen DeBoer's biggest challenge outside of, resetting expectations that Nick Saban's not there anymore?
Yeah, he's not going to reset expectations.
Yeah.
So maybe the challenge is just to understand that that's not going to take place. I personally think his biggest challenge is going to be to try to mirror what I believe Nick Saban's most impressive feat was during his tenure at Alabama, and that was being able to keep the power brokers at bay. That was being able to tell the boosters, the money guys, hey, you're not coming in here. You're not going to be hands-on with this program. We're doing it my way, and you need to stay over there. And we need your help financially. We need facilities. We obviously, then when NIL came along, we need that. But you're not going to come in here and tell me who to hire. You're not going to come be a part of practice. Those things aren't going to be real. You're not going to do that. And Nick Saban had a little bit of desperation on his side as an advantage to be able to pull that off. But that's by far the most impressive thing he's done. To what extent Kalen DeBoer is going to be able to do that will probably have a lot to do with his level of success. And you also have to imagine it becomes more difficult now because a lot of those guys, they haven't been able to get inside that program that they've wanted to for so long. And, now he's going to be a guy that has to say, oh, I know you haven't been in here in 20, 30 years, or you haven't been able to come in here for 15 years. We need you to stay back out. A lot of those guys think they're going to be able to get right back in.
Cole, there's a lot of dominoes still to fall, but when you look at what Kalen DeBoer likes to do offensively, is Jalen Milroe going to be able to fit into that? Does Will Rogers now head towards Tuscaloosa? How do you sort of project how that might work itself out?
I don't think Will Rogers ends up at Alabama, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a tough situation for him, and I had him on my podcast this past week, and talking to him since the news was announced. He's got a couple tough calls ahead of him, but I just think that Jalen Milroe sticks around, and I think Ryan Grubb can alter that offense to whatever weapons they have. They can be run heavy, run first. They can be a shot play offense. They can be a motion-based offense. They can go up speed. He can alter it however he needs to for his players to be successful. So I wouldn't expect Jalen Milroe to hit the portal. If he did, it would probably be after spring if something just didn't go right, but I think they can sit down with him and show him how they can help him develop, the same way they do with Michael Penix, and potentially turn him into an even better college quarterback.
Cole, Jedd Fisch to Washington to replace DeBoer. It's the cycle, the carousel, the hamster wheel. Somebody else now is about to lose a coach because Arizona will hire somebody. Your thoughts about the move that Washington made to try to at least overcome the loss of DeBoer?
Yeah, I hate it for those kids at Arizona because they had something special brewing. They really did. I thought Jedd did an awesome job of bringing in some of the old guard. He had Teddy Bruschi a part of the staff. Chuck Cecil was on that staff. He really went above and beyond to get the guys that have been an integral part of that program for a long time and bring them back in. And, Jedd Fisch showed this past year, whether it's building culture, whether it's getting guys in that understand how to do a little bit more with less, recruiting at a high level, getting guys that were maybe undervalued and making them into be great college football players. He can do all of that. So I was really impressed with him, been able to be around him twice this year for 2 different games. And I think he's going to win at Washington. I just hate the fact that he has to leave a lot behind that he built there in Arizona to go do it in Seattle.
Cole, do you think that SEC fans are breathing a sigh of relief about Nick Saban, or do they have to wait and see how good Kalen DeBoer is?
Well, either way, you're breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief because he's the greatest coach to walk this planet as far as college football is concerned. So you got to breathe a little bit easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is this sort of mutual respect that is now coming down. I think a lot of SEC fans of other schools thought this would be a day to celebrate, to rejoice, to be happy. And a lot of them are kind of like, wow, I can't believe this is real. And then having the understanding of what Nick Saban accomplished during his time at Alabama. And that's a weird feeling because you're excited that your team's going to have a better chance to go win football games, but you also have an appreciation of just how good he was. I also think there's a little bit of semblance of, with where we are right now, NIL, transfer portal, all the changes happening in college football. Guys, we're probably not going to get somebody that could operate the way that Nick Saban could. Today's college football is not really going to allow that, and I think there's a lot of people that are a little bummed about that.
Other than everybody, which of the SEC schools, maybe on one hand, or the incoming schools, Texas and OU, benefit the most from Saban being gone?
I think probably, it sounds crazy to say, but probably Georgia and Texas, maybe Auburn. Georgia and Texas are the 2 schools that run their program as closely to what Nick Saban did at Alabama. So I think now you sort of become the standard of how you operate and do what you do because he's no longer there. And as I stated, it's going to be more and more difficult for teams to operate that way moving forward. Auburn, plain and simple, that you don't have that guy right across the state any longer. So that is obviously going to help Hugh Freeze for a lot of different reasons in a lot of different ways. So I think those would be the schools that I would say probably at the front of the list. Not that Georgia needs a ton of help or Texas needs a ton of help, but those are the schools that seem to have that trajectory towards being at the top of the league and doing it the way that others just can't replicate. And now with Alabama and a little bit of uncertainty there, I would think that gives them massive advantages.
Cole, and I appreciate your time, and the game's about to kick, the NFL game, so we'll let you go here in just a second. But when you look at the way college football is, even Saban, in an interview with Reese Davis, made the comment about putting together some sort of parameters. It's not get off my lawn. He understands it. If you had the perfect way, for example, Jedd Fisch leaves for Washington, now players will leave with him and then whoever else. Is there any way to control that a little bit better in college football?
Yeah, I just think you have to have some sort of guardrails on the portal. I just don't think it can be this 7-11. And people can say, well, it's not open 365. It's not open this and that. But kids are still announcing that they're going when it's not open. So I think those guardrails have to be more of a one-time transfer policy. I mean, we got Casey Thompson going to play his 7th year at the 4th different school.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all of this stuff is stupid. And I understand people don't want to hear about loyalty and people want to talk about player rights, this, that, whatever. But it's just that there's some of it that we've allowed to go a little bit too far down the tracks. And listen, I'll be the first one to tell you what I would like to happen and want to happen, but I'll also tell you, I'll counter it with, yeah, you're going to get sued though. Right. And that's been the problem all along.
Mm-hmm.
Is here comes Thomas Mars, his college football ambulance chaser machine, and he's going to sue you for whatever he wants to. Now, I'd like to see what his response will be to the Tagovailoa family that apparently are saying that the one extra game they played at Alabama was to honor Tua, and therefore it shouldn't count against his redshirt year. But either way, I think you got a lot of guys that have learned how to game the system. You have a lot of people within the NCAA that are terrified of more lawsuits and more litigation. So it's just anything goes. I mean, we've turned this thing into Burger King. Have it your way, right away. Whatever you want to do. We don't care. Just keep the cash coming in and we'll be fine. But nobody's making these guys play college football. And that's what really continues to kill me. I don't understand why we treat it as if it's some sort of situation where nobody really wants to do it, but we're making them do it. And therefore they should have all these rights involved and all these different things should go their way. You don't have to play college football, man. Go bag groceries. Go be a bank teller. If it's not good enough for you, then just don't do it.
Last thing, Caleb Williams is entering the draft. That's not a surprise. It's the last-second decision, perhaps to get even more attention. Is there anything about him that is a red alert or a red flag in Caleb Williams in the NFL?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he can make every throw, big arm, changes his arm angle. He can throw off platform. He's got pretty decent mobility, especially mobility to throw, not so much mobility to run, but mobility to get out. I actually thought it was a little irresponsible how Lincoln used him outside of the pocket this year. Some of the zone read stuff, option stuff with an RPO attached to it, I thought really put him in harm's way. But he can be a big-time player. Is he that sort of alpha male personality? I don't know that. I hadn't been around him enough. But that's the one thing you wonder about some of these quarterbacks going into the ultimate leadership position in the NFL. Is they going to be able to command a locker room at that level? But to me, he seems like a guy that's going to be able to fit right in and be a franchise quarterback.
Cole, would you shovel snow out of a seat to go watch this game today?
To watch the Steelers, yeah, absolutely.
There you go. There you go.
Even though we know Mason Rudolph and don't know the status of T.J. Watt, to go potentially beat my brother-in-law's team and be able to rub that in, yeah, I'd be all over it.
Cole, thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time and the time you give us when we get a chance. That's Cole Cubelic, ESPN, SEC Network on 365 Sports.
Yeah, he just said what I've been kind of playing around with in my brain now for a little while and not knowing how to exactly say it, which is the part about, you don't have – these guys aren't, like, being forced at gunpoint to go play college football. Yeah. And, like, it does feel like we're just catering to everybody who has a complaint. And I say we, but, just in general, it's the college football machine just seems to cater of, like, oh, you need another year? Okay, here you go. And it's just it's the poor woe is me, athlete and everything's against it. It's just like this narrative. And then the whole time we just pretend like there's not these vampires who are sucking the blood out of the sport and milking it for as much money as they can when they clearly are. You see them all over Twitter arguing about NIL and player rights and all this, and all that's valid and all that needs to be a conversation. But the moment that you try to push back it all of a sudden, like you're anti-athlete, you hate the players, you're pro the machine, and it's like you can read the playbook, and it's exactly what he said of there's guys that are milking the system now at this point because they don't want to move on and because they can keep playing the victim card and get a 7th year of eligibility, or like Talia's trying to do, get a year that he should have no business receiving because he went past the threshold. Yeah. And yet here we are, last week, and here's Paul going, well, I bet they give it to him. And you're saying that just because they cave on everything, when the reality should be like, no, sorry, pal. The person who was in charge of your eligibility screwed up at Alabama, and they should have paid closer attention, or they should have realized that maybe you're not going to get drafted after 3 years and you might need that year. But sorry, somebody screwed up, and you can't put it back in the bottle, and you can't play another year because you went over the threshold. But here we are actually debating like, well, do you think he gets it? Derp, because they get everything else, right? And so, yeah, I see where he's coming from. You just want it to be college football. It's not anti-athlete. It's not hey, get your year back. But at some point when guys are like 7th-year seniors, it's just like enough already. And the example that he gave of Casey Thompson is the perfect one. It's not just 7 years, dude. It's 4 schools in 7 years. Like, what are we even doing here? And so as somebody who is very pro-athlete, I've even reached that point where it's like, come on now, dude. You're just bouncing around, collecting checks, and good for you. But, like, give me some semblance of actual college football where eligibility matters. You're not supposed to be here for 6 years.
That's part of the challenge, right?
Right.
Is that you have to And look, you have to do this in professional sports, but you have to reset your roster all the time. That's how the great ones did it. That's what we came up knowing. And for, this, here's my problem with all of this. You, Craig, I think you and I kind of have the same feeling on this. I think everybody should get everything that they're worth.
Yeah.
But we also need to have a real conversation about what everybody's worth, and things get done in the middle. Productivity and long-term success happens in the middle. When something skews one way or the other, then we hit gridlock. We hit ineffectiveness and things crumble. That's why, it's not good for, one side or the other just to win constantly, because there are things that just, people are different and you have to find something in the middle. And that's what college football needs to find, and college athletics needs to find, is a middle ground where it's not about you can't transfer 4 times. What
did you just say? You couldn't find a middle ground? That's why they're in the position they're in, because the NCAA never wanted a middle ground.
It's
They're exactly right.
Entirely,
look, you can look throughout human history. I'll just throw out the French Revolution. All right, why did the French Revolution happen? Because the aristocrats put the pedal to the floor for so long that eventually the people in France were like, nope, we're cutting off some heads now. Let's go. Well, they could have avoided all that by going, maybe this is a little greedy. And that's what the NCAA did. They are now in their French Revolution of, all right, well, you guys weren't going to listen to us forever. And it's not like, I know some people may feel like this is a new thing, but look, when I was a kid, I remember Chris Webber talking about hey, it's kind of bullcrap that I can walk past a store in the window and there's 100 Michigan number 2 jerseys and I don't get a penny out of that because that's me.
Yeah.
And the NCAA said, yeah, but it's not you.
Yeah, but that's also a different part of the conversation.
But then those things, so it's not it's a different part of the conversation, but those things there are what led to all this.
Yeah, no, it's the NCAA's fault entirely.
Because had they just said you know what, you're right there, then maybe some of these other things that are happening now never come up because people are like, well, this is a pretty good gig I've got here. Then I'm ready to go to the next level and move on, as opposed to, all right, well, you guys didn't let us do anything. Well, now I'm going to challenge you on every single thing I can because I know that you can't win.
Yes, and that's why all the lawyers have gathered, and they know that they can put out anything there that they want to, and they're going to win because there's really no argument for the NCAA in most every single one of these situations. And so, it's their fault. They pushed the pedal to the metal, and as far as making money off the backs of athletes and not sharing it, and now they're in a position where all of the receipts are due, basically, and they're getting hit from every corner. And so I don't pity the institutions. I don't pity the athletic departments that got all of those millions of dollars. I'm not team school where they get, poor them.
No, absolutely
It's just a matter of I just want to enjoy the sport where the guy's not playing his 7th year at his 4th school. I mean, that's all. That's all I'm asking for. And if he is, there should be a damn good reason as to why that is, but here we are, and look, the COVID year has also added to this, and that was something unforeseen that nobody could have planned for. You knew it was going to cause some disruptions down the line, and that's what it's done. But if the solution is a union, or if the solution is some kind of contractual agreement, or the solution is whatever it has to end up being to actually get to the middle ground that we so desire, so be it. I'm not against any of that. I'm all for the players getting what they're owed. But let's wrangle this into where it at least makes sense and resembles the game that we grew up watching, even though it's not the same game in that, yes, now you can get paid, but that doesn't mean you have to let everything go that everybody wants all the time. And that's what it's begun to feel like, and that they're even scared to even fight because they know that once it goes to court, they're going to lose.
They had all the control. They had all of the leverage. They had complete power. They got greedy, and their egos would not allow themselves to have somebody within the NCAA to be able to look into the future. The guardrails, there's some, and even Conundrum and others. And by the way, Congo, we'll get to your super chat in a minute. It's not that I don't want the players to get what they want. The point that I'm trying to make is eventually they would have lost a lawsuit. But they would have still been, at the time, if 15 or 20 years ago or before, whenever the first lawsuit came down, obviously Georgia, Oklahoma, and TV and all that, They had a chance where they could have negotiated with the players with the power. Now they have none. I think Casey Thompson playing 7 years, good for him. But is it good for college football? If you're a fan of Georgia, if you're a fan of Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, etc., you love today's college football. I would think you would love it because what's preventing you from even becoming more powerful? Even though someone could end up going to a Western Michigan or elsewhere and be pretty good. What is going to keep you from becoming more powerful? You would love where it is, like pig and slop. But is it in the best interest of college football? I don't know. Here's the super chat. Congo, do you think Kalen DeBoer to Alabama in 24 is like Rich Rod to Michigan in 2007?
No. I mean, I think he's going to be fine. I just think that the shoes that he's filling are just so immensely massive that it's just hard to imagine a scenario where he does enough quickly enough to where this isn't going to be, just a who knows what moving forward. I mean, I don't know what to expect because it's just so crazy in my head that Nick Saban's no longer around the game, and he was so dominant for so long, even though here towards the tail end you saw Georgia jump up and make it more interesting, and he didn't have quite the stranglehold on the sport that he had there for what seemed like a good while. But no, I don't view it as Rich Rod to Michigan necessarily. I'm just fascinated by the whole thing because it's so wildly different from what we've known. And quite frankly, before Nick Saban was hired at Alabama, for me at least, and I'm not somebody who was watching the SEC in the 80s because I was a baby, but I don't know Alabama really other than being basically irrelevant in my mind to Nick Saban. Like, that's their two eras to me, because in the 90s, I was too young when they won their last natty, and then they went to NCAA purgatory, and they were just there to me. I wasn't, and the SEC wasn't like the SEC, the way it is now. So they were just sort of there, and Nebraska was running
Florida
the sport,
State,
and Florida and
Miami,
Tennessee came around, but I wasn't even still at that point going, well, what's SEC? Because that really didn't start to me until the early 2000s. So I didn't think of Alabama like we think of Alabama or people thought of Alabama at that time. So I knew that, which is basically they were just there. And then I knew what they are the last 20 years. And so what else is there? I have no idea. And so, I'm just so intrigued by what that's going to look like.
All right, we got a break here. If we come back with Jason Shearer, make it quickly, Paul, if you don't mind.
Oh, no.
Okay. When we come back, Arizona is on the clock. Will they have a decision by the end of the day? Is this going to trickle into a day or two? DeBoer to Alabama. Washington opens. Jedd Fisch to Washington. Arizona opens. Somebody fills that job. Another one's open. We'll get to that and hear from Jason Shearer on the candidates. Jedd Fisch, a 3-minute meeting with his players. And what does it mean for a program that was probably as good as anybody when it comes to their expectations starting 2023 of anybody else in college football? This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com, Dr. Rob Maxey. What a great business, because it helps you, the customer, and you save money and find out something that's hurting you, a muscle, a ligament in your shoulder, your knee, your lower back, whatever it might be. They have a state-of-the-art technology MRI machine. It is fantastic. I've been in it. I've been in it for 2 or 3 things that were like annoying and something that really hurt. And what was great is by the end of the evening, I had already received a portal, an image, and also news from Dr. Rob Maxey, because the techs and the specialists and those who read the MRI had already been able to get it and get it back to him, to me. And I was able to either breathe a sigh of relief or go, oh, okay, something else. Find out what it is. Your doctor needs to recommend the MRI to Ideal MRI. They'll set you up an appointment. It will not take very long. You will not have a long wait when you get there. It's in the Central Texas marketplace in the southern part of Waco, I-35. And here's also great news, $497 and maybe less. The average MRI is $1,100, but IdealMRI.com, it's $497 at IdealMRI.com.
The savings continue with the Start Something New sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, get a 2023 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab 4-wheel drive with $15,000 off MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. Or a 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab 4-wheel drive with $12,000 off MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. Plus a special discount for first responders only at Allen Samuels. Come by, let's be friends.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs, too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
By the way, a little bit later in the show, our comments about my first trip to the Foster Pavilion to watch Baylor in Cincinnati Saturday night. And VJ Edgecombe, who committed to Baylor yesterday, one of the top 5, it depends on which particular one you look at, players in the country who committed to Baylor. We'll have more on that probably in the 5 o'clock hour, if not sooner. Jason Shear, Wildcat Authority. He will do anything to get a segment on this show, from realignment to now coaching changes. I can't even imagine the mood right now in Tucson, Jason. I heard about the 3-minute meeting. Are they closing in your opinion, on a target to replace Jedd Fisch?
Yeah, I think Arizona's going to have a head coach here in the next 48 hours. The athletic director, Dave Hickey, just met with the team briefly. He said, be patient. We're going to get this done soon. There's meetings with the NIL collective and all that today. Interviews started as recent as last night. And in this day and age, you can't drag out the process. I expect Arizona to have a head coach by Wednesday.
Jason, who makes sense for them, and is there trepidation just because they hit the ball out of the park with Jedd Fisch, and before that they'd had a history of strikeouts?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of skepticism about how this whole thing's going to go. there's really two schools of thought right now. Johnny Nansen, the former defensive coordinator, is the guy that can keep most of the roster together. He's also never been a head coach before, and with Arizona, the last 2 years was his first time as a coordinator. But he can absolutely keep most of the team together. Or do you hire a guy like Brent Brennan, who's had a lot of success at San Jose State, who learned from former Arizona coach Dick Tomey, who has ties to Tucson and would be here for quite a while. And those are probably the two guys that have emerged the most. And Arizona has a decision to make if it's willing to risk losing players or if it wants to go with the quick fix in Nansen and see how that works out.
Jason, so the meeting, I guess, with Jedd Fisch was 3 minutes. Is that correct? Can you kind of just give us some insight on his final, I guess, hurrah there in Tucson before getting on the jet and heading up to Seattle?
Yeah, someone that was in the meeting told me that it felt like the Washington AD had the car running and he had to get out of there real quick. It was like, it was basically, he went in the meeting, he said, I don't really know what to say. I accepted a job for Washington. I'm headed there, and thanks for everything. And that was like the entire meeting.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, what are you going to say, right? I guess there's not much to say. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about Arizona right now, some financial pitfalls because of, bad accounting. And there's a lot of talk on your Twitter timeline with people, of course, about, is that why they lost Jedd Fisch? Was there anything, Jason, that Arizona really could have realistically done to keep Jedd Fisch from going to the Big Ten into Washington? And B, how much of a problem could their financial issues in the university have when it comes to any athletics decisions coming up?
Yeah, I really don't think so because, look, Washington's paying Jedd Fisch like $7.5 million over 7 years. The state of Arizona has an actual law where you can't make a state employee you can't give a state employee a contract longer than 5. So the max contract you can get is 5 years. And Arizona is never paying a head football coach $7 million. It's just not going to happen. And so there was no way that they were ever going to match the money with Washington. Now, they were prepared to give Fisch an extension and a raise, and it was completely booster funded. And they had that ready. I assume that'll be able to go towards a new head coach, and then they get $5.5 million from Washington for Jedd Fisch's buyout. But again, Arizona's not going to hire some sitting coach that's making $6.5 million a year. Whoever they hire is going to be a guy that's going to make, $4 million a year, $5 million a year with escalators if he does well and bonuses and things like that. That's just the reality of the situation, and it was before the budget issues.
Noah Fifita at all. What is the panic level on the transfer portal?
To me, it comes down to who the hire is. From his family is saying, and he has a great family, they're saying all the right things. They're going to wait to see who the hire is. If it's Johnny Nansen, I think there's a very real chance that Noah Fifita could surprise people nationally and stay at Arizona. If it's not, I think he probably leaves unless he has a relationship with a new head coach. But, one thing that's always impressed me about this roster is a lot of them come from really good families, very sound decision makers and all that. And the biggest thing that I've gotten in the last 24 hours is shock, but they're also willing to see what's going to happen.
Jason, so how much do you feel like with Fisch? First of all, more money. Washington coming off the national championship game. They're headed to the Big Ten. Did the conferences changing have anything to do with what we now see?
I don't think so. I really don't. I know that Jedd he was a West Coast guy in terms of football coaching. He probably would have liked to see the Pac-12 stay together. He said that publicly, but I don't think it never really came up in conversations with him or his recruiting guys or assistant coaches. It was kind of business as usual. But Jedd's also a guy that wants the bigger stage. And at the end of the day, the Big Ten nationally is probably the bigger stage. And he's always going to kind of look for that next move up. And they'll do the same at Washington. That's just the guy. He's never been at a spot for more than 3 years, ever. He's been at like 15 coaching spots already in his career. And so if he does well at Washington and in 3 years he gets an offer, he'll probably take that too. That's just kind of who he is. He's always trying to move up or move to a different place.
I want to go back to Jansen. So he was widely, I guess, popular there. He gets a great opportunity at UT. I'm sure he's already in Austin. How much will you think it takes for him? It's a head coaching job. It's at Arizona. He's got obviously a commitment there, but now he's at a place that is one of the alphas. What do you think it's going to take?
Honestly, I think he takes it no matter what. I really do. He wants to be a head coach. This is his opportunity. They don't come around very often. He's beloved here. You know, the players absolutely love him. He's well liked with the community. I like Johnny a lot. He's a guy where I think he would take it. And I think Sark, who he's close friends with, that was one of the reasons why he went to Texas. I think Sark would probably tell him to take it because who knows when an opportunity like that comes along. And, Arizona gave him a chance, and Arizona was upset when he left, but he could easily come back, and no one would blame him for anything.
It's Jason Scheer, WildcatAuthority.com. It's been crazy the way it is. Is there a wild card in the coaching search, in your opinion, that we have not mentioned?
I don't know if there's a wild card. I would keep an eye on Cal head coach Justin Wilcox. He interviewed already. I'm not sure how serious of a candidate he is yet, but he was one of the first interviews. That's a move. We talked about conference realignment. Since Cal went to the ACC, there's been rumors that he's not happy with the move at all. No Cal coach is happy with the move. So that is definitely one that I wouldn't be surprised at all if he emerged as the guy.
All right, Jason, would you please stop creating news? We know you love our show, and we love you on the show, but my good, and we'll have you on once they make a decision. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate
Jason Scheer, 247 Sports, WildcatAuthority.com.
Yeah, it's a bummer for Arizona, that's for sure. We said at the top of the show that they were poised to roll into the Big 12 as one of the early favorites with Tetsuroa McMillan set to come back, who's one of the best wide receivers in the entire country, and certainly Noah Fafita, one of the best up-and-coming quarterbacks in the entire country. And you can just start there, and there's others, but now they're slowly getting into the transfer portal where they're moving on. And, what's left over for whoever the new head coach is going to be, we'll see, but sounds like it's moving fast. It has to. I mean, you can't really afford to have a long, drawn-out search, and the ones that do nowadays are the ones that typically fire their coach mid-season and then start that search in like October, right? Or hire their coach and have him roll into the offices before the season's over with to start to get ready for the next recruiting class and the next season. So these things move quickly, and you have no choice but to do that. Otherwise, you are going to, possibly miss out on being able to hold your roster together, or you're going to flail in recruiting right out of the gates. And so, yeah, not surprised to hear that Arizona's moving quick, but it does seem like they kind of got one hand tied behind their back in so many ways when you kind of read the tea leaves as far as the school's finances, and there's this kind of brewing. He touched on that, but it's a shame because I know there's a lot of people out there in Tucson and wider Wildcats fans who probably were excited for the first time in a long time, and you got a season really of good to latch onto. In the moment you're like, maybe I'll buy season tickets. It's like, he's out of here. And, it's back to who knows what the heck Arizona football looks like post Jedd Fisch, because he is a good coach. So, that's a bummer. And, for the Big 12, you felt like you had a school rolling in hot, and now it remains to be seen of just how hot they will be or if they even resemble the Arizona Wildcats team that we saw beating Oklahoma in the bowl game just a few weeks back.
I want to give you a story. I forgot who reported this story about Jedd Fisch. So he was a law student at Florida, and he went to the O.J. Simpson trial, and he kept asking Bill Belichick for a job, and eventually I think he got some okay. But he went to the O.J. Simpson trial, and at some point got on an elevator with, what was it, Paul? F. Lee Bailey, Johnny Cochran, and I believe it wasn't Kardashian,
Bob
Shapiro. And they get in the elevator, and I think it was F. Lee Bailey that looks at him and goes, "Who are you, and how did you get in this elevator?" Like, he was able to find a way to get in the elevator. He was a law student, so I'm sure that was pretty cool at the moment. It was just kind of like he finds a way. I know that a lot of people think this is slimy. He did what DeBoer did. He did what others have done. I hate it in a way because of the fact that Arizona coming to the Big 12, primed to be really good, and now they have to respond, which is kind of like, okay, next school up, who's it going to be?
So and this is, to me, what makes it nerve-wracking for Arizona fans, because between Dick Tomey and Jedd Fisch, and Jedd Fisch, remember, only had one good season, but they're completely at the bottom of the barrel when he got there, which is why he got this Washington job. You pulled him up out of the dungeon, but it was John Makovic for 2 years after he got fired at Texas. Then this is not including interim coaches, which would be Mike Hankwitz and Tim Kish, but John Makovic, Mike Stoops, Rich Rodriguez, and Kevin Sumlin. So between those four guys, they did not win a lot. And with Mike Stoops, they thought they were getting a guy on the way up. But with Makovic, Rich Rodriguez, and Kevin Sumlin, they were trying to rejuvenate careers that had fallen to the wayside a little bit, and that all didn't work. So they've got it's a difficult choice to make, because it's not like this is a program that just can breed success all that well, and they made a lot of bad decisions along the way. So, it does, especially coming into the Big 12 and this new conference and this chance you think like Jedd Fisch and Noah Fifita, and nobody knows who the best team's going to be. Like, you might actually win, like contend for the conference in year one, and now you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, it is. It's a scramble, and now whoever is in Arizona, we'll see what happens. But yeah, Kelly, it's UNLV, are they on the clock next? I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, Barry Odom. Speaking of UNLV, Garrett, do you have that? UNLV had a player who the boosters, Paul, I was going to ask you about this as an FSU guy, rallying an attempt to keep Ricky White, star receiver, offered a $250,000 NIL package to transfer to Notre Dame, according to sources. Currently is set to make $60,000 at UNLV. Efforts are underway to raise his salary. Just reading that is like, well, that's who we are. That's what we are in college football today. They know his money. They know what he's been offered, and now they're going to what's a plan B free agent or whatever, you have to offer it, or you give up a draft pick.
Yeah, I just hope that Barry Odom and none of his staff drove him to those meetings.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean,
I got a feeling they did.
That would be,
or they said, "Hey, by the way, you go to that second building on the left, and it's the third story. It's room 410."
That would be really reckless and untoward to do such a thing like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking of Florida State, obviously, I assume. Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to the Florida State thing, I mean, they did.
They settled the settlement. They knew they screwed up, clearly. But
you're right.
But it just seems like it's one of those deals where I almost feel like because you screwed up, but if you were at any other school and you hear what they did, you're like, well, we've probably done that. Because the question I would ask is like, okay, I understand that you want to keep some kind of barrier between the coaching staffs and the NIL collective, which to me doesn't make any sense, because you're going to create more problems than you're going to solve. But okay, that is. So what are we supposed to do for these kids that are now only coming to places if they can talk to the NIL collective? We can't tell people we're recruiting them. They're going to have to follow recruiting websites, and then you're just going to have these guys sitting in a van going, "Oh, there he is. Let's run and go talk to him." What's your alternative to this plan of us just facilitating this directly?
It's looking back at what we were kind of talking about a little while ago, the rant about just eligibility and kind of like just having some sort of standard. You're sitting here just throwing out numbers on this Ricky White, who I know is a very good player. He's a very good player for UNLV. But, I mean, just the simple fact that that's being thrown out, it's like, wow, it's nice to actually see figures that are realistic for the first time and not some just wild-ass projections, for one. But to just see it mentioned like that is just kind of wild. And I feel like there should probably be more of that. And that would come with some type of standard where, the money's like, why are we hiding it? Again, that's always my question of like, why do people get suddenly like real uptight when you start to want to talk about what's in the weeds of these conversations? And it's like, oh, is the middleman getting nervous? Is that what it is? But you're right. I mean, Florida State's getting popped for having to jump through hoops to try and figure out the right way to talk to a recruit. And it's like a meeting between two presidents having to meet out in the middle of nowhere to discuss like nuclear options. It's like it's a recruit and a coach, and the coach wants him to come here, and he's wanting to see what the money figure is. And why is this so complicated? Why is this so like they're meeting at an airport, but that's illegal because like what are we even doing? So that's when you talk about guardrails, that right there is simply wanting some clarification. Why is that a bad thing? To just is it not silly that Florida State's now on probation because the way they arranged the meeting between agent and player and possible landing spot was like not quite up to the, like, that's where clarification could also come into play and just make this a lot simpler and to the point for a lot of people rather than this still feeling of like you're meeting in the shadows and this person can't be. And that's where it's just weird to me of like, why is it like that? If it's all on the up and up and we're all for it and we all want to see these guys get paid, yeah, why are we not just having it be more like it should be where, hey, I want to possibly come here, but I want to hear your offer rather than meeting in airport lounges and, you know, having to run around and make sure this guy's in the other room when this conversation, it just seems silly.
It is interesting. It's almost like there's a dark room. It's got some shady to it.
Maybe maybe the NCAA misses the old bagman cloak and dagger style of it.
Yeah, it's like but we don't need that anymore.
They want the intrigue. I don't know, because
here's from JD. College players are private citizens. They shouldn't be required to disclose their financial situation just because you're a fan of the sport they play.
No, I agree with that. But I do think that it would some clarity in all of this. You know, if it's going to be, you know, look, do we know how much? I can tell you how much Josh Allen makes right now. I don't think that would be bad in all of this, so that we can get an understanding of what these budgets really are, and then that would probably help the sport move forward. Because part of it is that. The other part of the problem of all this cloak and dagger stuff is that it is very, I mean, Ricky White may not really have a $250,000 offer to go to Notre Dame. He can just say that he does, and then knowing
because
that
he has an agent,
but knowing
like Jimmy
that,
Sexton.
Here's the thing: the schools want to know that. The schools are the ones that want to know that because they don't want to get their price driven up because they're being told some phony number. So they're really the ones that would love to know what Ricky White's actually being given or being offered, and that's where they come in. I'm just saying I'm shocked to see the actual numbers put out there just so flippantly. Like,
it's hard for me to read that.
That's just weird to me because we'd never see that. And so me seeing that, that's just my reaction is like, wow, that's weird to see that. Now, the ones who really want to see the real deal figures, to your point, are the schools because they know they're probably getting played by street agent or regular agent or pops or high school coach or player themselves, and they don't know any better. My whole thing is not so much about the money figures. I was just shocked to see it, for one. My little rant, to at least be clear, is about the other stuff of the meeting in an airport, but you didn't meet the right way, and so now Florida State's on probation. It's like that's to me is where it's. I don't need to know what Ricky White's making. The coaches would like to know that. But I would like to know of, like, if Ricky White wants to go meet with Florida State, why does it have to be like the assistant coach has to leave the room at this time, and then it's got to be like that's the part to me where it's just kind of strange.
And
why
that's
it's still
about to change, I think.
And that's what I feel. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is that it just seems silly, and it should change, and it should be more out in the open and just clear, rather than more of kind of the way that it was when it wasn't even legal to do so. That's where I'm coming from, but I get you on the money figures.
I think that's going to change, and it might happen in within this calendar year, where the schools are going to get more in control of it, so that they can know what's going in, what's going out, what's there, and maybe, you know, I don't know if that changes anything, but I do believe based on the momentum that appears to be what is next. Now.
And when you see stuff like that, I mean, the whole conversation, the great split and all these other things, you know, you got that with Jedd Fisch, right? We got that whole conversation because here comes this upcoming Big Ten team, and they go and poach from a non-Big Ten, non-SEC team. And, I mean, Washington's a bigger job than Arizona to begin with. When they were both in the pack, it still was a bigger job. So he might have done that even if they were still in the same conference. But it does bring that around of just like another example of what could that look like? And then you see Notre Dame's offering a UNLV guy like up to $190,000 more than he's making right now. Was that what it was? It was over $100,000 more than he's making right now.
$250 compared to $60.
So $190,000 more. So, yeah, I mean, how do you compete with that? Not that UNLV was competing with Notre Dame, but that's not just UNLV. That's going to be Notre Dame doing that, or insert school here doing that to Pitt and to West Virginia and to anybody who's not a part of those 28 or so, whatever, or 32 schools that it is now, and that's going to keep going on. And what does that look like here in a couple of years?
Notre Dame can't sit there and go, no, we're not. It's like you wish they would go out and say, we're not offering anybody the $250, but they probably can't.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end, part of this is you don't want to say, like, if you want to get the kid and it's out there that's 250, it may not be 250, but you're not going to let it out there because then
here comes Georgia. They got 275.
Exactly. Like, oh, yeah. So that's why,
that's what I meant when I was talking, when the texter brought up the money figures and all that. Yeah, I don't care about that so much. I'm interested, though. If you want to show me what you're making, that's cool. I don't feel entitled to it. But, yeah, the coaches are the ones that want to know, because if they're sitting there and the guy from Texas A&M just offered Ricky White $100,000 and he's like, I don't know why this kid's not reacting, Mike. I'm not sure. Well, it's because they're unaware that the kid's getting offered $250 by Notre Dame or whatever it is, and that they're the ones who would like to know that because, man, you can see how the players are able, and good for them, but they're able to really just play around because no one really knows what's out there, and that's part of the game.
It is, and it could change tomorrow. It could change next month. It could change whenever. You just had the AFCA, the NCAA convention as well. Nothing has changed. There's a lot of, well, we're not there yet, or we need to meet. It's like the college football playoff. They always kick the can down the road, and eventually they did. That's another thing the NCAA and college football waited way too long to get done. Jacques Taylor, long time. He worked for the Dallas Morning News for the longest of time. He's going to join us today at 5:30 on the Cowboys Meltdown. And as I was working out this morning, watching the coverage, everything that I saw was what happened to Dak and the Cowboys. What will Jerry Jones do next? Because I understand the brand. But my God, it would have been nice to see, hey, how about what Green Bay did? Or what, it just would have been nice, but I understand. So we'll have ourselves. We're going to do that ourselves at 5:30 with the Cowboys and what's next for Jerry and company.
And touchdown Buffalo Bills, Dalton Kincaid.
Former Cowboys tight end.
No, that'd be Dalton Schultz.
Dalton Schultz, who scored in the Texans win.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz. But no, Dalton Kincaid makes it 14-0 in the snow there in Buffalo over the Steelers. As this one's off to a fast start for the hometown team here. So, yeah, 14-0, Josh Allen to Dalton Kincaid.
All right, when we come, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to power rank Daltons right now. Number 4, B. Dalton Bookstore. Number 3.
Is that still open?
Dalton, no.
Can't be, right?
No. Dalton Schultz, Houston Texans. Number 2, Dalton Kincaid, Buffalo Bills. And number 1, Dalton Patrick Swayze of Roadhouse.
Yeah. All right, there we go. Texans with a great win on Saturday with C.J. Stroud and the defense being just really, really good on both sides of the ball.
They're remaking Roadhouse. You know that, right?
Yes, with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, they're remaking Roadhouse. But Dalton Kincaid, also a Utah Ute.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's maybe where I remember him the most.
Yeah.
Come back with a one quarterback changing from one school to the next, just kind of under the radar. And then also today, the note about VJ Edgecombe, the Baylor commit, one of the top players in the country. He committed yesterday on national television. A couple of notes about him and what he's going to do with his NIL. That, and if you were a fan watching a game and it's down to the wire and they cut in for a weather update because it was snowing, how would you react? This and more, 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, used to be, and need to be. Usually around that late 30s, early 40s, your testosterone level, just because of father time, can drop. Just you happen to be that one, your testosterone level. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone, and maybe that is you. Sleep habits, energy, you're really, really more than normal lethargic. Your sex drive is not the same. It could be a couple of other things as well. If any of that's happening, it could be also your lifestyle that needs to get better. But it could be your testosterone. You see all the commercials now on television about low testosterone. Dr. Kent Petty can help you out. You contact him. Tell him I sent you. PettyClinicLowT.com. Email, phone number, top left-hand corner. They will set you up to get your blood work. You go get the blood work. They're going to take care of that. Then they get the results. Dr. Petty will look at it. If your testosterone levels are too low, he can put you in a program to increase your T levels and help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. PettyClinicLowT.com.
Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
So I showed you what the temperature, and I think it was Bracket Cat who lives, I think, on the border, southern border of Kansas, maybe the northern, about cold weather. We, of course, 2 or 3 years ago had the ice again, and it was awful. It was neat to me to enjoy any kind of winter, just a little bit. But it was brutal for a lot, including Craig and Paul. But last night, Rams and Lions in a really good football game with a lot on the line, of course, to move into the next round. Dan Campbell, the Lions, you know the story. Stafford against his former team, and Goff against the Rams. So there's about 2 minutes left in the game. And at the end of the broadcast, game is on the line. It's 24-20, I think, at the time. Maybe 24-23 at the time with the Lions up. Here is Brian Estridge, voice of TCU Athletics. 2 minutes to go in an NFL playoff game, and NBC DFW breaks away for nothing. I hate weather, guys. And then there was more and more and more, and they cut in, not because of anything urgent, because it had started snowing, and so they were going to inform the audience, and it's always a tough call, but not here. It was snowing, and they got blistered for it.
Let me ask you this. If we could take a time machine back or bring one of them here, and just one of the many Texan forefathers that, carved the attitude of, we're tougher than hell in Texas, and we're not afraid of anything here, and and then that's what we still say, and then by the way, it's 20 degrees outside. They're like, oh hell, let's get inside and make sure you've made your peace with God. Don't leave, please.
And even worse, it's snowing.
It's like, well, and then you're like, okay, it's snowing. Well, how bad? It's like, well, In about 3 hours, it's going to be a little bit tricky to drive out there, so you may not want to do that, but it's already 9:30 p.m., so you're probably not going to be driving anyway. Just know when you get up in the morning, school's probably going to be closed. That's the level of panic that we get to in Texas, which all of this could have been an email. Like, it really could have been. Mm-hmm. But when it gets this way, there is just such sheer panic. And look, because of 2021, I guess we still have that, and we've got to be worried, but honestly, some of these times it's like, well, is it going to be that cold or just going to be a lot colder than it normally is for 3 days? So it's not really that bad.
And I don't know how much of it's the actual Texans not being able to deal with severe weather that we typically would never get, as much as it is sometimes weathermen feeling like it's their time to shine, even though millions of people are wanting to watch the end of an NFL game, because I do think there is a mix of that, and I've seen it with weather guys. Like, yeah, we get it. It's raining, and it could rain a lot more, but you don't need to block out the next 30 minutes for you to stay on here like it's a tornado about to drop. Let me know, and you cut in when the tornado's about to drop or it's forming or whatever, but all this build-up for no reason is a little bit unnecessary. So, yeah, that's unfortunate for those. I guess one of the comments was I switched to Peacock right away, so there is that option out there for you, as I guess a lot of people signed up for Peacock apparently this past weekend.
Don't forget the free trial. You got to not extended after a month.
Yeah, and they're banking on a lot of people, I guess, not doing that. But I want to say, all due respect, I love Paul, but do not lump us in like we had the same experience during Ice Mageddon. No. I don't think he ever lost power. I was without power.
I did for a day.
You did?
Craig, you were near death.
Okay, yeah. I didn't think Paul had lost power, so I was going to say we lived two very different lives.
It was awful.
Yeah.
Smokey and I did a show that day. I still don't understand why we did, but we did. I had to do it at my mom's house. But yeah, I was over there for a whole day. But yeah, I was Craig, for 24 hours.
Craig almost became that Ted Williams, being like
y'all joke, but honestly,
I
was iced in. Could not leave, couldn't do it because the roads, even the parking lot, was iced over. No power in the complex for 2 days, and before I could finally get enough thaw to get out of there. And you saw me; I was in pretty rough shape because
you were
every piece of food had frozen, guys.
Yeah.
There was no crackers had frozen in the cabinets. There was everything frozen. You couldn't eat, couldn't warm up. It was pretty wild, so that will always stick with me. But yeah, we have not experienced anything like that. And if all we get is a little bit of a headache because of the end of a game cut in, then I'll deal with that. But
I had a fire going. I had heat. I had water. I had it all. I was a millionaire at that moment for a couple of days when we had the Ice-Ageddon. But it was bad. It was really, really bad. All right, Holy Cross quarterback Matthew Sluka headed to UNLV. Didn't the UNLV's quarterback just recently leave? He is now Walter Payton Award finalist at Holy Cross. Nice career, nice numbers. A player that perhaps has a chance to step up to the next level and even get more publicity. Now headed to UNLV and Barry Odom.
He's a dual threat player. He's fun to watch. I mean, I know that he'd even gotten maybe some visits at some places other than UNLV, but this is a good fit in Barry Odom's offense, and he's lost his quarterback and now gets another one. So I like that for Matthew Sluka and UNLV. I think it's a nice match.
So Florida in 2024 is going to play the following quarterbacks because of news over the weekend about Cam Ward headed to Miami after saying he was going to go to the NFL. Look who they're about to have to face in their 2024 schedule. Good luck to Billy Napier and company. With Cam Ward now, the latest decision happened a couple of days ago over the weekend, but he's now headed to the Hurricanes.
Yeah, and didn't touch on Jaden Maeva. That's a big little switcheroo he had there at the end of last week, going originally to commit and play for Georgia, and what was kind of a puzzling move, I think everybody thought at the time, was like, why are you going there when you're not guaranteed to play right away? Like, that's just really kind of silly, and obviously he changed his mind, is now going to USC, where they have lost their quarterback, so that was interesting to see. And speaking about NIL deals, I'm sure Jaden Maeva had his fair share of various offers thrown out there after the whirlwind of a few days ago, but that's big news that Cam Ward decided to pull out of the draft and end up with Miami, who desperately needed a quarterback. You were wondering, as these dominoes fell with the top quarterback targets, of where Miami was eventually going to be able to find a guy or who they were going to be able to find. And so I guess kept that conversation alive with Cam Ward, who was weighing all his options. It's a pretty quarterback-populated draft with top guys. So it seems like he had really no-lose scenario. I mean, you either got what you wanted from the NFL side of things and heard what you wanted, or you were going to get this bag in college football, and he ends up with the bag down in South Beach. So that's great for Cam Ward. That's a really nice pickup for the Hurricanes. That's something to be excited about. And yeah, it makes the schedule you just referred to there for Billy Napier and the Gators a lot more daunting.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, for Miami to look at a point where it's a dude from Albany competing with who you've got coming back, or wait till the spring, after the spring to get one. And then the timeline on that for a quarterback is not ideal because you don't have those extra spring practices for her to learn your system. And then getting the guy who was their top target all along is a nice little turnaround for Mario Cristobal and the Canes who they needed to hit on that. And look, they've got Cam Ward for a year, so they've got to capitalize on every snap that he has.
What about
for sure?
What if Reese Poffenberger beats out Cam Ward in the spring? Turns out to be this huge diamond in the rough, maybe. But no, that's a really good get, and now Miami's totally set as far as quarterback goes after a couple of additions. But Cam Ward was that jewel that you were wanting all along, and you got him, so that's huge for the Canes. I'm happy for Cam Ward. I'm glad we get to see him another year in college football and in a different setting than we have the last few years in Pullman. Nothing against Wazoo, but if he's going to stick around, it's nice to shake it up a little bit, and he'll certainly make some waves down there in Miami. So, yeah, that's another big piece of the quarterback puzzle that's now been solved.
By the way, Garrett, since we talked a little bit about the weather, Buffalo 14-0, what it was here at 1 degree, and what we mentioned about what happened early in 2021. Let's go to the one joke about ERCOT, although some people get a little sensitive to that. Aaron Rama, he's a comedian. ERCOT asked all of us to conserve energy, and only the Cowboys listened.
That is
fair. Wanted to throw that in there in the middle of all the discussion about the weather.
Thank you, Dak. Thank you, CD. Thank you, Jerry and Mike.
Micah.
It's Arun Rama. I know him. He's a really good comedian. So, yeah, that's a great spot. Yeah, nobody – Dan Quinn, who's off to Seattle to interview for their head coaching job, felt like he was already preparing his resume during the game yesterday and forgot that everything, you have to tackle Aaron Jones.
It's amazing anyone brings up. I know the defense sucked. I mean, Green Bay toyed with them. Receivers running free when the ball was like hanging in the air like a punt. But he's also one of the reasons they were in a position they were in the first place. But in the end, and we'll have Jacques Taylor at 5:30, it was a disaster from almost the opening kickoff for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I flipped a couple of different post games just to hear the fallout from it. And, man, all of a sudden you're getting like anti-Micah Parsons talk. Like he's playing out of position. He's, and I was just like, wow, they really are losing their damn minds here. If you're trying to like blame Micah Parsons in any way, even if it's valid what your critique is. But obviously a lot of, is Dak the guy? Mike McCarthy, is he the guy? And I'm sitting here thinking, like, man, they've been pretty dang good but yeah, I mean, what do you do? Because you're in that weird part of where you're successful enough that you can feel like you're chipping away and you're kind of close, but then at the same time, like, you can't get over that hump. But the alternative is you start all over again, and then are you rolling all the way back down to the bottom of the hill? So they're in a bit of a pickle, and I think that the answer is you just stick with what you're doing and hope that you break through. You give it another year, just the way that it's all set up. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those conversations you have to start having if you're Jerry Jones of like, do I have to make another coaching change? Which to me would seem crazy, but I know. But Paul's reaction is like, not so much. I mean, but yeah, that's
there's a lot of
that was a mess.
Garrett, Washington.
Oh,
Craig and I, Washington, would we take what Dallas is experiencing now?
See, we would say yes. We would say yes initially because it's comparing it to absolute crap.
Yeah.
But then as soon as we got that, we'd eventually can't get to the second round of the playoffs, and we would be the same as everybody else.
But at least you got to just keep chipping away. I know that it's frustrating, but
I do think that Mike McCarthy's situation is made worse by who's available. Because
for sure.
If Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel and Jim Harbaugh, and I don't know if they'll even talk to any of those three. Honestly, I have no idea. I would think that Bill Belichick's probably going to get a call from Jerry if he fires Mike McCarthy.
But man, he's up there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, there's
the reason why he allowed the discussion with Parcells had nothing to do with football. It had everything to do with wanting to get the vote to get the new stadium.
Yes, and
they don't need a new stadium.
But also I think Jerry was smart enough to know, like, look, I need to get somebody in here to help me
at least get it back on the road.
Rework it to where we're pointed in the right direction. And look, he also knew that Parcells and Larry Brown and guys like a guy like Larry Brown, where Bill Parcells stays somewhere for 4 or 5 years and then he goes somewhere else.
I tell you, a couple of the star players, CD and Micah Parsons, both, they probably don't need to go out in public anytime soon because it did seem like they were somewhat disengaged. They're both great players, but man, you're right, Craig. One of the post games that I was listening to, I listened to a couple of different ones too. They were all in his grill about what they saw.
I just had one in my own mind.
Your post-game show.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh my
I think
God!
A lot of people did.
And then again, you're going to get they need to make an ownership, and they're not going to do that. Yeah. They're not going to do it. So that's wasting time.
I want to get to that note you got right there because I think that's fascinating. But it's just interesting because you're so close, and it's like, do we start back at the end of the driveway potentially if we make a move, or we just need to knock a couple more times and then we get into the door? And that's the dilemma, and that's why the millionaires get to make those decisions, but they are in that kind of a spot where you can't quite tell if they're about to fall backwards or fall forwards. Mm-hmm. And man, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of decisions are made there.
We need to hit Softy at around 4:30 because he has his own show to do, and can't wait for that. But here's a note in college athletics: A&M athletic director Ross Bjork is the leading candidate at Ohio State to replace retiring Gene Smith.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, he did a very good job at A&M except for one thing. He was responsible for
the biggest thing,
a contract extension to Jimbo Fisher. He didn't hire Jimbo Fisher.
Cost him $90 million.
But he did spend a lot of money. Now, maybe you have some governors over you at Ohio State that probably wouldn't let you do such a thing because they're more experienced in these matters. But overall, as an athletic director through his career, Ole Miss, A&M, and other places he's been, he's very well thought of, and everybody gets one big mulligan. So,
all other ADs most likely would have done something similar had Fisher been available.
Yeah, it is how it is.
That can afford that.
You extend somebody even though they don't need to be extended. What happened to Ross Bjork, and the reason I think everybody gives him mulligan to this is he got totally Jimmy Sexton because Jimbo, Alabama, and we're not Alabama, but LSU was open, and then they're like, well, that's where he was when he was an offensive coordinator to Saban, so he would totally go to LSU, and LSU never even called him.
Yeah.
So
that's a fascinating move, and you're right. I mean, there's a reason as to why things worked out the way they did, but he's in the final stages according to the various reports out there. It should become official sometime this week. So it's a big important hire for Ohio State, and that's a significant loss for A&M, who I guess the only way that I really view it is not so much the Jimbo contract and how all that worked out. It's, man, right when Texas is coming to the SEC is when you decide that you've got to move on from your football coach who has this albatross of a contract, and now your AD who is responsible for it, he's leaving too. Like, of all the timing that you could have all of these changes occurring, it's right when your arch rival is about to roll into the league, and somebody who wasn't necessarily your rival, I guess conference rival in Oklahoma, who is another team that could very easily and very likely push you down another peg. They're rolling into. I don't know what the Aggies did, man. I don't know where the curse started or where it came from or what, but it's just like, of course that's the way that it worked. Yeah. Instead of being like Jimbo had a winning season and everything's aligned and we're rolling in, like everything's falling off. The wheels are falling off at the exact moment that all this is occurring. It's just like, of course it is.
They had an edge. They were in the SEC. They didn't take advantage of Johnny Manziel post, and that kind of turned out to be. But they had an edge, and they just absolutely just dropped the bag.
Not for lack of trying, though.
No, it's not like they would, but it's just and here's another thing. How many schools in America who have an AD would the AD leave for Ohio State? No. How many schools in America who have the AD, and everybody does, would the AD not take the job at Ohio State?
2?
Yeah,
it's
Texas,
Texas, maybe
Michigan,
maybe. Yeah, well, yeah.
But I mean, it is. As across the board in the athletic department, it's the most successful maybe of all time. So, and it is In the Big Ten, it is the power broker. Like, not only is it in the Big Ten, and no offense to Michigan because they are, but they are the power broker in that conference. What Ohio State says more than likely goes. Is where Texas A&M has never really once been in a position.
Even when they had a chance. Yeah.
So basically, all this time they had this buildup, and they're just starting on an even playing field with everybody else that's rolling in,
and maybe not,
and maybe not even
a tick or two behind.
Well, I mean, they're definitely not in as good a shape as Texas is at the moment. Texas has their athletic director for the foreseeable. Name how long?
And football coach is rolling.
Just got his contract extension after taking them to the national semis, and they're doing just fine.
NIL's in good spot. Really,
everything's
good shape.
fine there. Everything's fine there. And then maybe basketball's not quite as good as you want, but that's nitpicking here. Football wise, everything's fine. And then for Oklahoma, I mean, you feel like everything's pretty fine there as well. And Venables, not necessarily a big loud year. They still double-digit wins. I mean, so, like, that's a down year. Like, sure. I mean, at least you know that Venables can get you to that point. We can go worry about the rest of it later, but the thing that would have been worrisome had he won, like, 7 games this year, and you're like, oh, damn, did we hire the wrong guy? Now you feel like, no, he's got this thing on the right trajectory, the Jackson Arnold era, this and that. But, yeah, if you're A&M, you've lost 2 of the biggest and most important pieces at the exact time that everything's about to flip and you're about to see some old faces.
We called a facility up in Seattle, Washington, over the last several days to see how Softy was doing. He is out. He is out of the facility of misery. And with us now on 365 Sports, there is glimmer in Seattle for the University of Washington. Softy, how you doing, buddy? And did UW do it right?
Well, I may have left the psychiatric hospital, but I still have to go back for a weekly checkup. I'm not out of the woods yet. My doctor says you got to come back and we got to check on you once a week and make sure that you're not a danger to yourself or others around you, man. I mean, it's been brutal, man. It's been absolutely brutal this last week. I mean, Dave, 8 days ago, Washington was playing for the national championship against Michigan, and now almost every starter, either via the draft or the portal or graduation, is gone. And there's a new coach in Jedd Fisch, who obviously, as you guys know, was hired yesterday. My mind is completely blown by how much things have changed for Husky football in the last 8 days. I've never seen anything like it ever. It's crazy, man.
When Nick Saban retired, how quickly did Husky fans get nervous about Kalen DeBoer?
Very quickly. I got nervous about Kalen DeBoer when I found out that he hired Jimmy Sexton to be his agent.
Yeah.
And that was a couple months ago when that word came out that he had kind of let go of his longtime guy and hired the Scott Boras of college football. I mean, there's 2 guys that run college football. I think you know who they are. It's Jimmy Sexton and Greg Sankey. And when you got one of them working for you who can, move all these chess pieces around, Sarkisian, Norvell, DeBoer, Saban was a client of his. I don't know how much Jimmy Sexton subscribes to the client-lawyer privilege, but the idea that Kalen DeBoer had known for weeks, if not months, that Nick Saban was going to call it quits, I don't think that's out of the realm of reality. I mean, look, this guy was offered a contract before Washington played Oregon on December 1st in Las Vegas for about $8.5 million a year. And his agent, smartly so, said, don't sign anything, because if you win the whole thing, that 8.5 is going to become 9.5, if not 10.5. And he was exactly right. He played it great, right? Both sides played it great when it comes to money. And it was to UW's detriment, right? I mean, Washington in the end, I heard yesterday actually came in with an offer for $10.5 million, but by that time, I think, the cart was too far down the road, guys. We're talking about Alabama, right? I mean, look, whether it's 10.5 in Seattle or 10.5 in Tuscaloosa, the allure of Alabama is just too much for any head coach, I think, to turn down, especially one like Kalen DeBoer, who you got to remember, 7-8 years ago was coaching at Sioux Falls, for God's sakes, in the NAIA. There's no part of him at that point in time in his life thought he'd ever be succeeding Nick Saban at Alabama. So I don't blame him for doing it at all. I'm bummed out beyond belief that he left, because he's a phenomenal coach and a great guy. I loved covering him and working with him. And the fact that he's gone, it just, there's no other word for it. It sucks. Absolutely sucks.
Softy, we were talking about this last week and the rumor started up, and I was kind of saying along the way for all the teams that were involved in having success, you enjoy the journey, enjoy the moment. Were you at least able to do that? Were you able to enjoy that journey of this past season and really soak in the moment, even though it didn't end the way that you wanted it to? And now, obviously, a double whammy.
It was a hell of a ride, man. I mean, it feels different now looking back on it, right? Maybe you don't have the same kind of affinity for it that you should, which sucks. I mean, those players had nothing to do with this. They busted their ass, man. They got Washington to 25-3 over the course of 2 years, 25-3. Beat their hated rival 3 times, twice in 1 year. Won the last ever Pac-12 championship in Vegas. Won their first New Year's Six bowl game since Rick Neuheisel won the Rose Bowl in 2000. They won the most games ever in program history, had a runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. It was a hell of a run. I just think a lot of more people would kind of enjoy it and maybe feel differently about it if the team wasn't gutted and the head coach didn't take off the minute the season was over. So, look, I mean, depending on how long it takes Jedd Fisch to get this thing back on track, ask me in 3 or 4 years how I feel about the way this thing ended. But I think in the end it was a positive for Washington no matter what. If you would have told me 3 years ago or 2 years ago after Washington went 4-8 and Jimmy Lake got fired that you're going to hire a guy who's going to be here for 2 years and do all those things I just mentioned, but then he's going to bolt and the roster is going to fall apart and a new guy's going to take over, I think I still would have signed up for it, to be honest with you.
So did your mind immediately once the job opened go to a Jedd Fisch? And regardless, what were your thoughts or what are your thoughts now that it is Jedd Fisch?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is the usual suspects. Lance Leipold, Kansas, Matt Campbell, Iowa State. Guys that were here, Ryan Grubb, obviously the offensive coordinator was the guy that we talked about, but they were never going to hire Ryan Grubb. They were never going to hire a coordinator to be their head coach, not after what happened with Jimmy Lake 2 years ago. That experiment fell apart so badly for Washington that they were just never going to go and let this be a training ground for anybody. They had to get a sitting head coach and somebody with experience. And guys, let's face it, Jedd Fisch doesn't have a boatload of experience. He's only been the head coach at Arizona for 3 years. He coached 2 games at UCLA when Jim Mora got fired, and he went 1-1, losing their bowl game. And then he went to Arizona 3 years ago, and he went 17-22. Now, the good thing about Jedd Fisch, got a lot of contacts in the NFL. Good thing about Jedd Fisch, he took a 1-11 football team, and 2 years later they were 10-3. And 2 of those 3 games, by the way, guys, they lost in overtime. One of them in triple overtime to USC. So that's how far away they were from maybe winning every single game they played this year. So I don't know, man. I mean, I'm going to give the guy a shot. Obviously, I don't know if they could have done much better than what they just got in Jedd Fisch, to be honest with you. And, Troy Dannon getting this done as quickly as he did. This whole thing for UW kind of fell apart on Thursday night, to be honest with you. And by Sunday afternoon, the fact that they already had a head coach in place, just glad it didn't drag out any longer because this program needs a leader and one fast.
Softy, who left under worse circumstances, Fisch or DeBoer?
Oh, boy. Good question. Probably DeBoer, to be honest with you. I know that Kalen wasn't very happy with the fact that the word came out Friday morning that he was leaving before he had a chance to tell his team. Jedd Fisch had a lengthy statement, Dave, that he put out on social media. I never really saw that from Kalen, to be honest with you, and that was slightly disappointing. But I just think, when you've got a team that is on the verge of maybe being a contender every year for a playoff spot in the Big Ten, and you take off for Alabama, again, I don't blame the guy, and I don't think there's any real good way to do this, right, guys? I mean, when you're going to leave, you're going to leave. People are going to be mad. Feelings are going to be hurt. People will call you a fraud. They'll call you a traitor. Yeah, that's just kind of part of the equation here. I mean, when you leave 100 and whatever guys who you've told for years that you love them and that you trust them and that you want to be there for them every minute, and then all of a sudden you're not, this kind of stuff is just going to be, it's inevitable that you're going to get talked about like that. So there really is no soft landing for anybody, but I would say that the way that Kalen left might be a little bit rougher than the way Jedd left. But you know what, guys? Honestly, I wasn't on that side in Arizona, and frankly, don't even care. I mean, it sucks for college football. I hate what college football has become in some ways in this regard, but I was more concerned about the way Kalen left than the way Jedd Fisch left.
Softy, I mean, you mentioned that for college football and the way things work, the timetable here is just not, Nick Saban retires after the national championship game. Everybody else has kind of put their pieces in place for the most part. So it's not really an effective time to do it because you have, they're trying to replace Jedd Fisch in Arizona in 48 hours. They did the same thing with Kalen DeBoer. Right. It doesn't seem reasonable to be like, all right, this is our guy. We better make sure we get it done in 24 hours so we can be here doing a press conference before everybody flips out.
Well, and then you got the portal, and then you got the 30-day window, which is, that's the new reality of college football. And I get it. And frankly, I'm a fan of it. I think the more power the players have to move around and go do something that they want to do and take advantage of their little sliver of time they have in their lives to play college football, go for it. But there's a negative to it, right? And the negative is that teams fall apart and that fans are left kind of holding the bag. Programs are left holding the bag. The new coach is left without a real roster. There's a price that comes with that. And this is the price that you're seeing. If everybody is okay with this and this is what we want college football to be, then great, so be it. If the main important thing is to get the players as much freedom of movement as possible, then we've accomplished that. But there certainly is a negative to that side, and you guys are seeing it right now.
Softy, with us, you had an idea. I think I saw this. I know you got to go for your own show. There are no.
I got time. I'm off today, by the way.
Okay, good. There's no way to prevent the portal right now. I mean, it is what it is. But I thought I saw you had an idea about players like they do in the NFL. You want to go play for a certain coach, but you're drafted. That's not going to happen. But you then go and you sign with a school and you get the extra money because they share the revenue. Do you feel like that would help change things? It never maybe happened, but is that your idea?
Well, I just think, look, I mean, if we're not going to let you transfer around, after coaches leave, then there's got to be some kind of compensation for giving up that power. And the compensation would be in the form of money, right? I mean, you're basically a pro athlete. I mean, can you imagine in the NFL, guys, if in the NFL they allowed the entire roster to pack up and move after a head coach got fired or quit? Like Pete Carroll was just let go a week ago by the Seahawks. Can you imagine if all 54 guys were allowed to walk and just take off? I mean, that's chaos, right? Crazy. But, college football players aren't compensated the way they are in the NFL. So I think you start compensating college football players. You make them sign contracts with teams. It's a 5-year deal. And we're going to pay you X amount of money a year. You get your agent, you get your lawyer, and we'll sign this thing, and you're with us. And if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. But if you don't want to do it, then you're not going to get paid. What do you want? Do you want your compensation as an employee, or do you want your freedom to take off and move if a coach is replaced or quits? So I just think they got to find a way to get this under control because, Dave, look, in the end, Washington's going to figure it out. But then Arizona's got to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And then whoever Arizona hires, that school's got to figure it out. We just keep kicking the can down the road and just making this somebody else's problem, right? So I don't know. I mean, I just think in the end, this whole thing's got to be looked at because there's just pure chaos right now in college football. This much player movement every single year, I don't think is good for the game.
How, and I don't know if it's the stadium, the field, and I don't know that enough, Softy, but is there a statue? How is Don James honored at Husky Stadium? How is that?
There's a statue between the basketball arena and the football stadium that looks out to Montlake, and Jim Owens and Don James are the only two guys that have statues outside the stadium.
I think because of what you've seen lately with DeBoer, and again, it's part of who we are as college football today, I think they need to make that statue of Don James 10 feet higher.
No kidding. And there's never going to be another Don James ever. And I said that on Twitter the other day that I got a bad habit, man. Every time the Huskies hire a new coach, we always wonder, hey, can this guy be the next Don James? And what that means is, can he be there for 15, 20 years? Not necessarily is he going to win a national championship and, go to 6 Rose Bowls for God's sakes, but is this going to be a guy who's going to spend the rest of his career as a head football coach with us on campus at Washington? Is he going to be our guy? And I just don't think you're ever going to find that again in college football, man. It's very few and far between that somebody spends that kind of time on campus, because if they have success, number one, at Washington, we've seen that they'll leave for a bigger program like USC with Stark and like Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, or they go to the NFL. I mean, Rick Neuheisel, before he got fired in 2003, was talking to the 49ers, and he was talking to Notre Dame. So there's always going to be a bigger fish when it comes to UW. I'm not saying that UW is the smallest fish in the pond. That's crazy, obviously. But there's always going to be a bigger fish when it comes to Washington. So you're never going to ever hear me again ask about somebody being the next Don James, because we're just never going to see it.
Does Dan Quinn have as much value today as he did before yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely not. No question about it. That was a disaster yesterday, guys. I don't know. I assume you guys are Cowboy fans, man, watching that yesterday. That was a friggin' joke. I was shocked at how much they just let that Green Bay offense just pull them apart. And I'm kind of irritated because I had Green Bay in a survivor pool, and they lost to Tampa Bay in like week 17. Baker Mayfield had a perfect passer rating, and I lost him. I was down to 3. It was me and 2 other guys for $20,000.
What?
And I lost because freaking Green Bay could not beat Tampa Bay at Lambeau Field. So I'm watching that game yesterday thinking, is this the same Packer team that just got their ass kicked by the Buccaneers like 2 weeks ago? This is the same team that the Dallas Cowboys are letting fry them and slice them up through the air and on the ground. It was an absolute embarrassing joke, I thought, for Dallas yesterday. And look, I get it. You know, one game is not going to decide a guy's future. Dan Quinn is a good coach. He's a good culture guy, and he would slide right in here to Seattle and be a great successor to Pete Carroll. But there's no doubt that I think his resume took a little bit of a kick in the crotch yesterday, if you ask me.
Softy, as a lifelong Cowboys fan, I can tell you, here's what happens with the Cowboys. They are good at every single thing, but not great necessarily. And they will have one glaring weakness that when the postseason comes, that it will be completely exploited, and that all year long was their run defense, and Dan Quinn couldn't do anything about it. And yesterday, the playoffs happened, and the Packers exploited it so much that even they were thrown to wide open receivers because the Cowboys were just so crossed up yesterday.
Oh, it was unbelievable.
Well, what they're bad at is winning playoff games. That's what they're horrible at, and they got an owner that needs to get the hell out of the way and hire a football person to run the franchise. I mean, look, guys, when was the last time the Cowboys played in the conference championship game? Has it been 30 years?
95. Right? It's been 28 years.
95.
Yeah, and that's just stupid. I mean, Smokey was 70 years old. He's now 95 the last time they played in the conference championship game. But that's embarrassing for the Dallas freaking Cowboys and that star and that logo and that organization for how much they're beloved and how much they're supported. To go 30 years without playing in a conference championship game is embarrassing. So I know this. If I were doing a radio show in Dallas, I'd be banging the drum for Jerry Jones to quit, retire, or move into a nursing home every single day and let a football person take over that organization. That's embarrassing.
And it won't happen. It won't happen. By the way,
did I ever tell you my Jerry Jones, Mike Holmgren story?
No.
How much Jerry Jones likes money? Holmgren does a show with us every week, and he tells the story a lot that they're at the owners' meetings about 15, 20 years ago. And he looks over during a meeting, and Jerry Jones is doodling something on a cocktail napkin. He looks over, and he's been doodling dollar signs on a cocktail napkin the entire freaking meeting. So, yeah, he's in it for the money. I know he loves the Cowboys, and I know he thinks he knows what he's doing, but there's nothing worse than a guy that doesn't know what he's doing who thinks he does, and that's what you have in Jerry Jones, man. I feel bad for Cowboy fans.
By the way, you could say a lot of things about me, but don't ever call me a Cowboys fan because I'm a lifelong.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding, but I'm not. I'm a lifelong Washington, and of course they're a train wreck too for the last 30 years.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it, Softy. Appreciate your time. Softy Mahler back out of his rehab. And we'll, again, check in he was down and out. Like, he's a fan of Washington and the Seahawks. And what a week it was for both of those fan bases.
Yeah, if about a week and a half ago, they were on cloud 9.
We could go tonight, right?
And now, fast forward a week, and it's a far departure or far cry from what he was experiencing just a week ago. So, yeah, it just can go by, that success or that fun vibe around a team or around a city, and no time flat. And that's certainly what's happened up in the Seattle area. But I'm glad to hear that he was able to enjoy the journey along the way. But yeah, it definitely leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in your mouth when at the very end of like this magical journey, you don't even get a chance to exhale, and all of a sudden it's already flipped the way that it did with Washington. That's what's very bittersweet about it. But you got all that led up to that, and they'll be okay. I mean, they're moving on to the Big Ten. Jedd Fisch is a good coach, but they are going to experience some of that part of the process where you're losing big-time players, I'm sure, who are now going to be transferring to Alabama, and then worrying about who you can hold on to and then who you can go get. But it appears, based on the reporting that we're seeing, that basically the coaching staff's pretty much locked in mass going from Arizona to Washington. It looks like Jedd Fisch will only have to make maybe a couple of hires because it seems like everybody involved with the Wildcats is heading to go be a Husky, which is not a total shock there. But, yeah, that turned on a dime for Seattle fans for sure.
Appreciate Softy being available. Also, thanks earlier, Jason Shear. We will have Jacques Taylor at 5:30 or a little bit before 5:30 on the Cowboys, and they're out again. And then also, don't forget, as we go on throughout the week, we'll bring you college football guests, and much more. Buffalo now 21-0. Long run by Josh Allen, who would be the perfect quarterback, you would think, in this particular weather because he's big and strong, can run, and he did about 55 or 60 yards. The AP Top 25 men's basketball poll is out. We'll go through that, the top 10, and a couple of other nuggets there. And this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on, and right now they've got the Buicks, a perfect combination of first-class luxury and value like no other sport utility vehicle, ranked the #1 overall brand for new vehicle quality by J.D. Powers. The Buick Envision model offers amazing value right now. Save $5,000 on a Buick Envision, and qualified buyers get 1.9% financing on Buick's top-rated SUVs. Plus, military and first responders can also save an additional $500 over at the dealership as well. And we are talking about Richard Carr, which means that they've got the best. Not only the best offers there when it comes to a new vehicle like the Buick Envision, but they also trade for the best. So if you're not looking to go new, but you are in the market for a vehicle, they've got a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock as well, along with their lineup of Buicks. 100 used cars and trucks to choose from, all inspected with 172-point inspection and the Richard Carr seal of approval, and a financing goal at Richard Carr that is 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no. So take advantage of the great deals going on now. Explore more by heading on over to the dealership or visiting the website or give them a call. But know that when you do get in business with Richard Carr, that you're dealing with people that have been in business for 24 years in Central Texas, and over that time has built a reputation as the people that you can count on for your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected. Get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide. Affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Just saw this in the chat room. Alicio R., Jonah Coleman, transfer portal from Arizona to Washington is a done deal. Man, let me ask you a question. This is not about the legalities of where we are with NIL and transfer portal. Coaches, I think if there was ever an argument that coaches, because of what they can do, players should be able to do it too. And I'll be honest with you, maybe is how I was brought up and maybe because I was so used to the old way, everyone's right. I mean, what Jedd Fisch has done, what Kalen DeBoer has done, what others have done, it should be something that is looked at of how now players can do it. Now, an extra year or two of eligibility, I don't know. But let me ask you this. Paul, you're a fan of a blue blood, or at least one right there on the cusp in Florida State. Garrett, LSU, Craig, Oklahoma, me, Nebraska. It's been a while for them. But there's a lot of you who are in this chat room that are fans of either Oklahoma, Texas. There's even Georgia. I don't know if we still get the Ohio State fan, the Buckeye fan. Is this the way you want college football to be? And I would think, and I said this earlier today, if you're one of those schools or fans of one of those schools, why would you want it to change? Why? Maybe one day one of the dogs has something happen where they get raided or whatever. But is this, and that doesn't mean things will change, is this the way you want college football to be today?
I think that the chaos is what is annoying about it, and that it's just, I mean, there's just no structure to it. And that's what I want, is just, there's a middle ground here where everybody wins. We're really bad at that as a people of
everyone wins a ribbon?
No, it's not everyone wins a ribbon.
Trophy? Okay.
Clearly
Everyone,
not in this case.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Everyone wants their way. And it's not about the we, it's about the me. And what about my school? What about this? What about that? This and that. Like, what's good for the many? And that needs to be the focus. And that's not the focus on things. And I think that's the problem we have, because I don't see that attitude changing, because it's all based on the individuals and not the what's best for the whole of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation we really have like probably every single day, because nothing's changing, guys. I mean, it's not going to go back to where it was.
I understand that.
But what I'm saying
that, yeah.
is like, you got to ask me as the guy who has a lot of respect and feelings and joy for a lot of those other fan bases out there that aren't one of those schools that you mentioned. And so from that standpoint, yeah, I don't want it to change. I don't want the Big 12 or the ACC or whatever to fade away. I think having multiple conferences, multiple rivalries, multiple parts of the country that are all involved, I think all of that is good. Now, as an Oklahoma fan, am I excited about the fact that they're going to go from playing Iowa State and Baylor and TCU and West Virginia to now playing Alabama and Georgia? Yeah, I absolutely am. Would that make me want to pay more, or would that make me, if I lived in Norman, Oklahoma, more likely to get season tickets? Yep, it probably would. Is that going to be bigger TV ratings? Sure will be. Is that going to make more money? Absolutely. And that's all Oklahoma and Joe Castiglione have to worry about. They don't have to worry about Baylor and Iowa State, and I'm sorry, but that's just true, though. Mm-hmm. It's not LSU's job to worry about What happens to Tulane? It's not Florida State or Florida or Miami's job to worry about UCF, right? And so that's just reality. And there is it's not even an argument. It absolutely is fair to say that a school like Texas or like Oklahoma has helped float a lot of these other schools for many years. And that's absolutely true. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I want them to go away. Doesn't mean I want them to play like a semi-pro level of ball that's like nothing like what Oklahoma or Texas are playing, which is full-on pro ball in whatever kind of arrangement. So, yeah, it's from a fan standpoint, I'm fired up. I think Oklahoma fans see that schedule drop, and they're like, hell, yeah, I'm going to this place, and this team's coming here. And you saw, the Texas release, and Chris Del Conte made the comment about how, in the long run, they got Florida and Georgia coming to town. I mean, that's massive versus what their typical regular schedule would be. So it was something that was going to eventually happen because the separation just kept becoming too much. But when you got money so involved that every penny matters and everybody's scrounging for it, of course the ones who make the most of it are going to be like, so why are we sharing it with you guys? Like, why are we not going to go get more of what we've helped earn? And so that's not an answer to your question. I see it from everyone's standpoint. I don't think it's good.
Let me stop you on that, though.
Yeah.
The NFL is the most powerful league in the, not world, because the soccer has some leagues that are monstrous. If the Cowboys, with their value, or other franchises with their value are willing to share the revenue with Buffalo, Cincinnati, or whoever else, if they understand the value of sharing the revenue, why wouldn't college football?
Well, there's more people. I mean, it's just it's a volume issue that college football has, in that there's a.
Are they sharing with the Dallas Desperados of the Arena Football League? Yeah. Are they worried about the Fort Worth whatever?
But okay. If there were 52 NFL franchises, I think they'd keep the same.
But there's not.
I know.
But I do think, though, that there's.
Hold on. I agree with you that there's a lot of schools that have been carrying the water and the buckets, a lot more of it, for years and years and years, and they finally went, why are we doing this?
Yeah. And look, maybe that needs to be the discussion of, okay, the water carriers go off, and let's stop pretending, and let's just say what we want to say. And then we figure out, like, we have to talk about what things are in reality as opposed to what we want them to be. And that allows us to have a middle ground of, okay, these are the places that make this much money. These are the places that make this much money. Athletes are entitled, depending on where they are, to this. And just have a discussion about changing this thing from the top down that works for everybody, and everybody can settle into the spot where they fit best and can be best for those programs. I think that's the better thing. But like right now, it's just so chaotic, it feels like it's never going to get wrangled in.
Yeah, and I know I just cut straight to the point there, and you're like, well, hear me out. But the thing is I get what you're trying to say, but that's not the reality. So it doesn't really matter if it was like that, because it's not like that, and it's not ever going to be like that. And so that's why I just dismiss it. I understand it's more of a thought exercise. Well, what if? But that what if is not realistic in any way, and it's not going to happen. So that's why I just immediately bypass that, not because I don't want to think, it's just, it feels like a waste of time.
But in the SEC, okay, again, not the same amount of teams, but in the SEC, they are fine, at least they have been. Now, that may change in the next 5 years, with Vanderbilt getting the same amount of money as Alabama or Georgia.
Because Vanderbilt doesn't give them nothing. They give them academic credibility. They give them an old down south institution that's been a part of the fabric for decades and decades. They have their role. And guess what? Somebody's going to have
Oregon State and Washington State and Iowa State and Kansas State have been a part of the fabric for years.
Okay, well, where does it stop there?
I know. I'm just, you know.
I get what you're saying, but it's just, I'm sorry, there's not enough room on the boat. Like, are we going to drown because we're trying to save? Greg Sankey's not worried about Iowa State. He's not worried about Oregon State. They're worried about the SEC or the Big Ten, or the TV executives are worried about what's going to make them the most money and get them the most ratings. And it sounds harsh, I guess, but it's just the way that it's going is the way that they're going to be able to accomplish those things. And I don't think that they care. And quite frankly, if we're talking big business, this has been the case for decades in this country.
Yeah, and I get it. I get that.
It's just the way that it is.
Well, I think a good question would be: are Kansas State fans? And I'm not picking on you like you're the low life or the lower part. I'm not. Baylor fans, Minnesota fans, whoever, are they going to be as tuned in to the highest level of college football if it was to separate into 32 teams.
I mean, I think that's a great concern. You think so? Okay.
I do. I think because I think you look at it from gambling.
Yeah.
There's so many different
That's a big part of
avenues
it.
where people are always going to have an eyeball on it. And I think anytime you have a matchup where you're drawing Michigan versus somebody else, like that's naturally going to get your eyes. People are still going to watch.
I'm going to watch a big football game. I may not watch, for example, just an example, Tulane against Washington State, even if it was Cam Ward or not.
Right.
But I will watch if Michigan's going to play Georgia.
There you go.
I mean, even in October, like
that's all there is.
Like my favorite time of the year is either late in the year when you have the rivalries, which are some of them are disappearing, or early in the year when you have really, really high intensity, like Texas, Alabama was in September.
So I think of it this way: and I don't feel like hopefully every day we have to have like the existential crisis of college football conversation, because it is just what it is, and we need to adapt like everybody else has to adapt with it. And yeah, things are changing, and some people are going to probably not get the way that they want in the end sooner or later, or however else that comes about. But when Bill Hancock was talking to us about a couple of years ago, the fact that they weren't worried about people tuning out if it became, more exclusive or things of that nature. I think you look at any Michigan game this year or whatever, but you look especially at the ones where they're playing another name brand school, and if you're ESPN or you're Fox or whoever, okay, we might lose 20,000 viewers because Iowa State fans became disinterested because they're not a part of the club anymore, right? But if you're still raking in 10.5 million because Iowa State doesn't play, but you're putting on Ohio State, Michigan, and the next week's Ohio State and Florida, and the next week's Ohio State and A&M, and the next, are you really going to miss those viewers that it's not going to be significant enough, is what I'm trying to say, unless every fan of every school that's not involved in whatever you think this is going to be were to somehow all bandy together by the masses, all of them, and say, we millions of people all combined are not going to watch. That's how you would feel it, but that's not going to happen.
Well, look,
because people are going to bet, they're going to still want to watch football, and they're going to be drawn to big name brands. And so what you might lose, I think, is like, it's not a fatal blow. It's a nick, it's a cut. You might bleed a little bit, but you're not going to like suddenly go from 5 million viewers to like 2 million viewers,
right.
because you didn't include 9 of the 10 Big 12 teams.
Well, and look, I'll just give you a real world example of people saying, well, we're not going to watch this anymore, and the entity not being phased at all was Colin Kaepernick. There was a bunch of people who said, well, I'm not going to watch the NFL if they're going to kneel. Okay. And the NFL was like, all right, well, so,
they've lost viewers, but they haven't lost anything that affects the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, did it like...
They still have more people watching now than ever before.
Yeah, again, the train kept going on the tracks, and some people got off, and looked at, the market does what the market does, but that wasn't the thing that undid the NFL.
And guarantee you some of them came back.
Yeah, and so
guarantee
that.
Here's another
part
example.
of it is
It's the same people that said, I'll never love the Cowboys or watch them again. Yeah. You fired Tom Landry.
They were watching yesterday.
4 years later, my God, they're playing for a Super Bowl, and you couldn't buy enough jerseys.
No, I often will run up against a Cowboys fan I've still never forgiven Jerry for firing Tom Landry, and I'm like, I get it, but did you really not enjoy the 90s? They were awesome. And I know sometimes you say that because you're a person who's like, I'm going to boycott this, and then you can't walk it back, so you just
I wouldn't
watch it in
publicly
secret.
say it, but I don't watch some things like I used to.
And
but if you're a person who around your friends is like, I'm never watching those sons of bitches again.
No.
And then
I've said that about Nebraska.
Then you start watching them. You can't walk it back because
if you're a
you
fan,
made such
you don't walk
yeah.
away because of a coach getting fired.
Here's the thing about this whole breakaway thing or whatever is that people present it in different ways. There's one element of it where it's it would basically be the minor league or whatever, which I don't know about all of that, but it could be viewed that way, I suppose, if it was all of the top brands and whatever. But it's not as though all these other programs then shutter and stop playing football. And it doesn't mean that they have no spot in the playoff. It's just a matter of, like, do you eventually get drowned out because those who are in power keep making the rules to benefit themselves, to where all of a sudden, there's no auto bids, and now 8 of the 12 all come.
And they block you out.
And that's legitimate, and that's a legitimate concern. And the blocking out, I think, is real. But I don't know how it's healthy for even those schools, no matter how much money they're making. I don't know how it's healthy overall. If you distance yourself, that's one kind of conversation. But the idea of, like, it would just be them and everything else just shutters basically and falls to where no one cares about it, I don't think that would be the case either. I think there might be some element of fans who would love more of a pure college football league, even if it didn't include the Blue Bloods and even if it didn't bring in 2 million viewers every week, but something that's just a little bit more college football.
All right,
the way
you think
they know
South
it.
Dakota State didn't
changes?
celebrate their championship?
Yeah.
Sure they did. Or North Dakota State, all 30 of them? Or Mount Union?
I think it's the feeling that you're not a part of the club.
No,
Whereas
no,
with
it is.
South Dakota State, they're in their own club already. They don't care about the other club.
They understand where they are.
Their
Not that
club's
they don't want to
good.
go play Michigan in a non-conference game.
It's just a tough pill to swallow if you're a Baylor fan or you're, West Virginia fan or something, and all of a sudden you're going to the not-so-exclusive club that you felt like you belonged to for a long time. That's a tough pill to swallow, but I do think there is still a way that it would be entertaining and to be good. But again, we're kind of putting all this way ahead of it because it's not to where it's getting to that point just yet.
I don't think the number will ever be like as low as 32 that you hear about,
Right.
or the two conferences. I still think it'll be pretty close to whatever the number is of what are considered Power 5 type schools with a Notre Dame or one or other still involved. Now, from Bracket Cat, Kansas State fan, and then I want to give you we're going to talk about VJ Edgecombe, the Baylor commit, and also my thoughts about my first game at the Foster Pavilion on Saturday night. Bracket Cat, no, I won't watch the games. If K-State gets permanently demoted, I'm done with college football. We've proven we can compete at a high level. It's just dumb money, history thing keeping us out.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I think you are saying what a lot of people would feel as well. And so, yeah, I wouldn't blame you one bit. But again, what are we even talking about here? Are we talking about where, and I'm not talking to you, but just the general conversation of, I guess you're coming from a standpoint of 32, the SEC and the Big Ten have broken off. They're playing their own games only with each other.
They're not going to do that.
And that's what I'm saying.
And that's what I was wanting to make sure we don't hey, there's going to be 24 teams.
Right. So, we're not there. We're not even close to that happening. No matter what you're being told on Twitter, that's not close. And when I mean close, and I mean like imminent, that's not in the next couple of years. Is that something going to happen? Now, 10 years down the road, I don't know if I'm even going to be alive in 10 years. So who the hell knows really what happens by that point. But, yeah, I don't think there's a world where like a K-State suddenly doesn't have a place at any table whatsoever when it comes to determining a champion. I think that would be silly, and I think most people understand how silly that would be.
The amount of commitment that schools like K-State or Baylor or others or TCU,
et cetera,
Texas Tech, et cetera. And if you think, wait a minute, we're not going to be the ones left out, be careful. Justin R., as a fan of a G5 school, I think the problem is that media, and in parentheses ESPN, makes it out where if you aren't in the playoff, then your season didn't matter.
Absolutely. That's the new problem for sure, because you used to just be able to go win a bowl game, and now
feel like you're pretty good. Yeah.
Now of the top 12 teams, how many are in them with a win? One. Of the top 12 teams in the country, only one will end their season with a win. Whereas you could be like team number 5 in the polls, and you win, you beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl to end your season. And hey, you didn't play for a national title, but damn it, you won the Rose Bowl. You beat Michigan. Like, that's going to soar you into the offseason. And those days are gone now, because you're probably, I mean, again, unless you're one of the team that's standing at the end all by yourself, or you're a team that didn't make the playoff, like all the rest of them are losing their last game. So the way we view this, I don't think we quite even know yet how that's going to feel, because we've never experienced anything like it before, right? We've seen it on a smaller scale, and it is a little bit different. So, yeah, I don't know. It's all very strange, but
the feeling of getting to a bowl game is a program that, like Liz had gone through the wilderness, or 4-8, getting to a bowl game, becoming bowl eligible, that feeling, even though you're not going to be a part of the playoff, and then going to win a bowl game wherever it might be, finishing, let's say, 9-4, that's a momentum thing. Now you wonder how much of a momentum thing that will still be.
Well, and I don't think the bowls are going to go away, though. I know for all the hand-wringing about, there's still going to be cities that want their tourism dollars and want their companies.
Look, they're money laundering fronts, essentially.
Exactly
so,
right.
like, you're
Makes
not
good
going to.
money.
Yeah, but how
it's
many?
like,
No, but you know what? How many sponsors this year, with players opting out, no longer a part of really? How many of those sponsors are going to keep feeding the beast, or will they be replaced by somebody else when it's open?
There's always somebody, but
I think there's going to be some that go, screw it, I'm not doing this anymore.
No, you're right, and it happens every year where Poulet and Weed Eater decided it wasn't worth their money anymore to sponsor the Independence Bowl,
Pop-Tarts.
and then somebody else is going to come in, a bigger brand or whoever. Now there's a way to maybe stem the tide of some of these opt-outs, although it's not going to stop the guys who are going to be surefire first-round draft picks from maybe skipping out of a bowl game that has no potential to the playoff. It's just pay them. Like, look, they've had, like, it's so weird. Some of these bowl games are so big. Like, I remember one year the Fiesta Bowl gave all the players PlayStations. Like, I'm sure they love it, but, like, you know what else they would love? Like,
$10,000.
Like, yeah, like $500.
All right, but if you have USC coming to your bowl game, do you give Caleb Williams $50,000 and everybody else $20,000?
Well, see, that's not our problem to worry about.
No,
That's for them to worry about. But I mean, it's a legitimate question. And you know what? Maybe you don't, and Caleb Williams just don't get to play in the game.
Yeah.
And you move
Which
on,
he was
and
not gonna
another
do anyway. Yeah.
and another kid has an opportunity and makes the most of it, like we saw with USC this past season. I didn't like how there seems to be like an overwhelming entity now that is not ESPN, but just in general, like this. This desire, I feel like, to eliminate bowl games now and to make everything basically two conferences and just make it a playoff and basically make it the NFL. And I don't think that's what college athletics is supposed to be, or that what most people want it to be. I think the people who cover some of those games do. I think that's where you hear a lot of it more than anything else, is people that want to go cover those games as opposed to having to go to Ames, Iowa, or Waco, Texas, or wherever, anywhere USA, as opposed to every week being like the college game day game of the week. I think that's some of it is just media favoritism, because that's the bigger assignment or the bigger draw, the bigger game. I think some of it is just the ability from other fan bases to dunk on the lower fan bases. But is that new at all? Has that ever not been the case? And so, there's a lot of that social media chatter out there, but it doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. And that's like the dying days of your program are on the horizon. But I mean, yeah, it's certainly a time where you got to be a little bit nervous about where this is all headed if you're not one of those, 20 or so schools, if it's even that much at this point. But it is when you count the two conferences together. But yeah, I think there's a pull kind of in that direction because of the networks. They want the biggest matchups, right? They want the biggest. They don't want to see the $2 million for Iowa State and Texas. They can get $7 million for Texas and Auburn, and that's what they're looking at. And I don't like the fact that the TV networks are driving all this, because that's what it ends up being. Whereas I think for most fans and a lot of the media as well, like, you want it the way that it has been, even though you acknowledge like there are some changes that need to be made, and we do need to quit pretending like Memphis has a shot to win the national championship on any given year, especially in this day and age. I think everybody's kind of got to reset their expectations a little bit and just be more realistic about what it is your team is capable of doing, if that makes sense.
All right, well, I'm going to give a comment. Some of you asked me about my first trip to the Foster Pavilion. We'll have Jacques Taylor in about 10, 15 minutes. But I want to clarify something. I just saw this on the chat room, and I kind of saw a little bit of this blowback. Mark Quinton, I have a really good question. Why does David Smoak not see Oklahoma State as the front runner for the Big 12 title game? They have virtually the same team from last year. I don't even know. I've had a few people who actually contacted me about that, and I have not even given my thoughts about next year. I know Arizona was one that was thought of as red hot, just like before the year it might have been Utah. So Dennis Dodd tweeted this out yesterday when Fisch was leaving Arizona. The Big 12 is going to be fascinating next year. Arizona football was probably going to be favored, might still be, but with no Fisch, it's realistic for UA. KU, Utah, K-State to dream of playing for the national championship. Think about it, in a 12-team college football playoff. So I saw that, and I retweeted it because of what he was saying about Arizona football. But some Oklahoma State fans thought that I was agreeing with him that Oklahoma State was not a part of the mix next year, and Quinton just came into the chat room and asked the question.
We have no idea.
Dude, what are you talking about?
I wasn't, Quinton. So, Mark, I'm glad you asked, because I saw a little bit of simmering. I've had a couple of direct messages and a few other. I never was even commenting on Oklahoma State and or next year, but rather the rails maybe, or Arizona's football momentum might be off the rails. So my point is, I think Mike Gundy will have a heck of a football team. I didn't think he would this year. I was wrong. But don't be so overly sensitive about what I tweeted out yesterday.
This is the biggest straw man thing I think I've seen in quite some time. I have no idea what y'all are even bitching about. Not you specifically, unless you are too, but I don't even know. I don't even recall you saying that.
I didn't. I retweeted
I don't recall
Dennis
us like hammering home our Big 12 predictions for next year. I think y'all are worked up over something somebody said somewhere. You maybe need to track that person down who started whatever little rumor is that we're bagging on the Cowboys, because I have no idea what you're
it wasn't you,
about.
Craig. It wasn't you. I said it.
I'm just saying
Dennis,
we as in us.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Wherever that started, track that down and tell that person to, I don't know, figure something out other than whatever it is they came up with in their heads, because that's entirely manufactured and not realistic to what we've been talking about at all.
Sometimes on Twitter, the context cannot always be seen, and it was about Arizona perhaps losing their momentum. He could have listed all 16 teams to satisfy you and all the other fan bases. It was just a quick comment about Arizona.
In the modern era of college football, and with a totally new conference and new quarterbacks and new coaches and all these things that are changing everywhere, I don't think that you can confidently say that any team is going to be in the mix or out of the mix until we see them play each other.
Yeah.
Like the schedule, like these are teams that have never seen each other. These are players who have never seen each other. Like there's
It is not a crazy thing to about a week ago have said, in no way, shape, or form is it a crazy thing to have said prior to the last few days that Arizona is a favorite to reach the Big 12 title game next year.
Yeah.
That is not a crazy thing to say. That is not anti any other school. Guess who's also a favorite? Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Guess who's also a favorite? I mean, insert a team. But yeah, saying that before the Jedd Fisch move is absolutely fair and realistic, and now it doesn't matter because things have already changed. But yeah, that's not a crazy thing to say, and it also doesn't mean that means that your particular school you root for is
was
not
being left out on purpose.
That's just trying to get angry over nothing, really.
Yeah, it was, and I wanted to do it. I'm glad, Mark, you got on the chat room.
Thanks,
I haven't
Mark.
heard back from you since I responded, and maybe you were waiting all day to do that. And now I hope you understand that maybe you were a little bit on edge over something that wasn't even there. Now, just a quick note. I went to the Foster Pavilion for the first time Saturday night. I loved the place. It's not even done, but I love the place. I now realize why they opened, because it's fine. It will be even better and better and better once the season ends and as they continue to do more and more work, including the basketball operations building, the practice facilities, more locker rooms. There's still a lot of work to be done. Inside the shell of when I watched the game was fantastic. Everything about it was fantastic. There's a couple of quirks. You've heard about the camera angle. I don't know if they'll fix that or not. Maybe they will. Honestly, I've watched a couple of games too. I'm used to it. It's okay. As far as the seating, the music, the noise, the scoreboards on either end, I went around to about 15, I think it was 26 different locations. Just wanted to say, I've read a lot about it. I've heard a lot about it. I didn't go last week because I wasn't feeling well. I loved it. I absolutely think if you can go and get to a game, watch it. There's not everything's flawless in any arena. I thought it was fantastic, and I enjoyed the atmosphere. And Cincinnati played a hell of a game. Lost a second game in a row in the last possession. Texas at home, and then Baylor in Waco.
Yeah, I've heard good things. Haven't been over there just yet for a variety of different reasons, but will make my way over there. And it is unfinished. I mean, there are things that they have not been able to get done just yet, but for the main part of it that's able to host games and function the way that it's supposed to, I've heard nothing but rave reviews. There is that camera angle, but that has nothing to do with attending a game in person. That's just if you're watching at home. And I do think that's a weird deal. That's something that you hope to find a way to correct or just improve this offseason. But as far as the in-game experience, I've seen nothing but pretty much rave reviews. Maybe a thing here or there that somebody has a complaint about, but nothing that like ruins the experience or makes you say, oh, well, what a mistake this was. Far from it. Big, huge thumbs up from everybody that I've come across when it comes to the Foster Pavilion experience, keeping in mind that it's still very much a work in progress, and then that just gets you excited because if it's already this good, imagine what it's going to be like once they get it all done with this offseason. But I think about the noise? I mean, was it significantly more noise? Did it feel like in that building?
No, it's some, like I've had a few people that like have hearing aids because it's pretty loud. Now, you all know that I don't have the greatest hearing.
What? Huh?
I don't hear tones and pitches. I can hear, I just can't hear certain pitches and tones. It never once ever affected the way I was watching the basketball.
Well,
I loved it.
It came across loud in all the clips and whatnot that I've seen, and just the game broadcast as well. But it just sounds a lot louder than Farrell because it's smaller with more people packed in there, or it's tighter because the amount of people they have in there is packed into smaller quarters, and the way they designed it really seems to play well with the noise. And I was just sitting there thinking, hearing some of those clips and just seeing how Scott Drew's now a couple of times gone to the social media platforms to thank Baylor fans, and you could tell he's genuinely excited about the fact that they have a home court advantage, guys, like an actual.
Yeah, that game at the Farrell Center may have had I'm not saying, but it would have been a different atmosphere.
Yeah, so they have a real home court advantage, and so I'm sitting there thinking of it like Thanos with the Infinity Stones. So there were 6 Infinity Stones, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're Scott Drew, I was thinking about this way. We haven't talked about B.J. Edgecombe, but you've already put multiple 5-star recruits into the rotation now at this point. So you've got the recruiting going on right now. What's one thing he didn't have, though, was NBA success. And now you're looking at probably the 4th year in a row where you're going to have a first-round draft pick. You've had 3 straight seasons, and Jacoby Walter's probably going to make it 4. Yeah. First-round picks. Yeah. So that's all of a sudden, that's in the mix as well. You've got national championship. That's not something you have to go and do. You've already done that. The banner's there. You've got Big 12 titles. That's not something you have to do. You've already done that. That's there. What was the 5th one? Recruiting, you got that. NBA success, you got that. The Natty, you've got alignment from your president down to your athletic director down to your head basketball coach. What's the one thing, the one remaining stone, if you're Scott Drew, that you did not have, is a home court advantage, like a real deal. People are affected by playing at home, and now he has that. It appears, at least, that he has that now, and so they've got it all working right now. And I saw our old buddy Armstrong, he used to sit in Garrett's chair, talking about how new blue bloods aren't born every day, and that to be in this moment, not saying that Baylor's a blue blood, but they are very well in their trajectory as far as a basketball program goes. They are working their way there in quick fashion with all the things they now have at their disposal. And you got to win way more to be considered that, I understand. But as far as like seeing the ascension of a program to where maybe one day, if it keeps stringing along, they could reach that kind of a conversation, it's all happening right now, right in front of you. So for all the wailing over the football program and this and that, look, the chances for the football program to ever be considered a blue blood are basically nil. All right, let's just be realistic. And it's only getting decreasingly less chances given where the sport's headed. I mean, it doesn't play into the hands of a Baylor. It plays into the hands of Ohio State. But in basketball, that's a different story. You can compete. You can spin NIL in basketball because everybody's got the same roster. You're not going over 80 guys. And so I just thought about the fact that he's now got the one thing that has been missing. And shoot, I mean, just look out because he's already got a natty and you've got this home court advantage now. It's just very exciting to see where Scott Drew could potentially take this thing.
I cannot tell you how much over the years, I mean, he was begging people to come to the arena. Begging people.
No, he was.
And that's not something you want. Like, and part of it was because just the way that the Farrell Center is constructed is not, the Farrell Center is not a basketball arena. It's an arena. It's a multi-purpose building that hosts basketball games, and the lion's share of the events that are in that building happen to be basketball games. But it was never really a basketball arena. It was basketball was played in there, and so there are all these little things that happened over the years. Like they moved the students because, I mean, it was the dumbest thing, but Tom Pender's wife got mad at a couple of idiots. And so Baylor reacted in a weird way to that. And then that decision never got reversed because in that time they sold those seats to people who were paying a whole lot more money, and Baylor needed the money, so they just kind of kept going on. And then the students just kind of got further and further away from the court. And then Scott Drew comes in and is like, well, that's not how it is at all the places they win all the time. The students are here and they're a part of it. They need to be because this is for them before it's for us. And he finally got that, and nobody's earned it more than Scott Drew in doing what that is. So that building signifies so much that he's done, Craig. And you're right. He finally has that last Infinity Stone in the glove, in the gauntlet, and this will help them on down the line when you have a kid coming in that can sit in Foster Pavilion and go, holy crap, this is fun. Not saying that didn't happen in the Farrell, but there were some days, if you picked the wrong game to have that kid come to, you'd be like, well, this is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of out of luck.
There's no question. The students are right behind both benches. It's loud. You're right on top of the play. There are some quirks with it based on where you might seat. It is fine. And if you haven't gone to the game, I hope you have a chance to get to a game. To me, it was worth the experience. And I get to get in. Yeah, I have a media pass, but it wasn't like my seats were right down on courtside. I was with a bunch of NBA scouts where they were watching from above what was the second half home basket where Baylor's bench was to my left.
And NBA scouts will continue to be there not only because of Jacoby Walter, but now VJ Edgecombe, the big 5-star top 5
and whoever's on the opponent team.
Yeah, VJ Edgecombe committing yesterday over Duke and Kentucky, right? Was those the final two? I mean, that's a huge get. I saw a lot of thought that he's going to end up at Duke or whatever, but yeah, that's more of that recruiting that he's landing big-time players. And so, yeah, it's all working out really well right now.
I tell you what, though, at Kansas State tomorrow night, where they were 0-2 last year, home and away, and then also Texas on the road Saturday in Austin, 11 o'clock tip. Coming up, Jacques Taylor on the Cowboys yet again. Failure in the postseason. This is 365 Sports.
It's the Start Something New sales event at Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat on the Loop in Waco, and also starting the 2024 kickoff. Outstanding year-end closeout deals last month. Huge savings on some of the most versatile and luxurious vehicles in the market now. 2023 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab with $15,000 below MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. Or how about the 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, $12,000 below MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. And the Jeep deals will blow your mind. 2023 Gladiator Overland, $13,185 off MSRP, and every 2023 Gladiator gets 15% off MSRP. Amazingly hot deals include the Grand Cherokee, best-selling SUV ever, and all the 2023 models are 10% below MSRP. The 2023 Jeep Compass and Jeep Renegades are also 10% off and below MSRP. Don't wait too long. The incentives expire on January 16th, so you have a couple of weeks to do that. Inventory dwindling, time is running out, but what a great start to the year. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and Equal Housing Lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 superfan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Jacques Taylor, longtime writer for the Dallas Morning News, and now basically his own company has done an incredible job. Award-winning journalist and president of JJT Media Group, someone that is always there for an opinion on the Cowboys and pretty much everything else. And a book, Garrett, you want to pop that up if you don't mind, that he's written on Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and the making of men. Jean-Jacques Taylor joins us now on 365 Sports. And we want to, JJT, to get into the book, no question, especially Deion, Colorado, headed to the Big 12 and the story that he was in 2023. Why is it the Cowboys in the postseason with some success and a lot of trips to the postseason are still in this nearly now 30-year drought?
That, my friend, is a $64,000 question. I'd have a lot of money if I knew the answer to that. I think every year has got its own story. I don't think that's a big surprise. I think if you look at yesterday, man, they look good during the week, but and when I say that, when you talk to people privately, when you talk to people publicly, they said all the right things. You didn't get a vibe or a sense that something was off. But I don't think you had to look too far into the game yesterday, man, to see that they just played tight. They played like they had the weight of the world on them, whereas the Packers were free and easy. And the worst thing that happened to them was the Packers came down and hit them in the mouth with that 12-play, 75-yard drive that took 7 minutes to start the game, and whatever pressure you felt was immediately doubled because you're like, if we don't score, we already chasing the game, and it's just, a few minutes into the game. And so I was really disappointed by their performance. I mean, not that I'm breaking news here, but the totality of it. I mean, you look at all the other teams around the league, man. Everybody who was playing at home started fast and took care of business. Detroit won by a point, but they started fast. And I mean, everything was set up for them to do their thing, and they just collapsed, bro.
Jacques, Jerry Jones has the decision to make when it comes to Mike McCarthy. 4 years, 1 playoff win, but 3 straight 12-win seasons. It's more of a pickle he's had in a lot of the coaching decisions he's made. If he moves on from Mike McCarthy, is that too rash?
No. But, I'm not you have to always look at the big picture, man. And I don't know, what Jerry has to do is he's embarrassed by yesterday's performance. I've got my own podcast too, because it's called Jock Talk. But we were talking on it last night, and the same way your friends were texting you, talking about, man, can you believe the Cowboys? What's wrong with them? Jerry's friends were texting him. And so what I'm saying is it's an incredible embarrassment. And there will be a scapegoat for an embarrassment like that. The question is, who is it? Maybe you can blame it on Dan Quinn on his way out the door. But if you look at it as a process, not a result, the process is you're 12-5. 3 years in a row. You're playing good regular season football. You're having a chance to compete in the playoffs every year. You're not getting the result that you desire. So if you fire Mike McCarthy, will your process remain the same, and will you get a better result at the end? And that's the $64,000 question. You know, and you got to understand the Cowboys. They fire him. Okay, cool. You want to fire him. Who are you going to hire?
Mm-hmm.
Because there shouldn't be a coaching search. It should be we fired him, we hired this guy. And so if you don't have that guy, you know, you probably need to keep him because remember, he's the offensive coordinator. So if you bring somebody else in, now Dak Prescott's learning the new offense. Will he be as effective in the new scheme? Will the scheme fit him the way this one does? All those questions have to be taken into account while fans just want blood. Fans want somebody's head up on a skewer. And you can't give it to them right now until you know what you're going to do with your organization.
Jacques, what is Jerry's MO when it comes to something like we've seen this year, as far as what happened yesterday, where people want immediate blood, like you said? Is his MO to normally, like, disappear for 3 or 4 days or what?
Well, he normally takes, he was very, when he spoke to the media yesterday, he made sure not to say anything that he would have to walk back. That's why he was very cautious in his words in terms of, I don't want to talk about the coaches and the players right now, because they don't want to have to walk anything back. He told his weekly radio shows that he and Steven won't be appearing this week, which is not necessarily all that unusual, but given the set of circumstances, it kind of is. I think he's really, yesterday's one of the few times I've seen him really, truly stunned by a result. And what I mean is, everybody could have seen a way for the Packers to win. They're in the playoffs, so it's not like they're a bad team. They've been hot. Their quarterback's been playing good. So there was a lot of ways you could see for the Packers to win. Cowboys committed a bunch of turnovers, all this other stuff. What you did not see was a blowout loss. You can see a blowout win. You can see a close win. You can see a close loss. You did not see a blowout loss. And so, he was at a loss for words, man. So I think he spent the day probably huddled up with Steven trying to figure out what the hell did we see yesterday, son? What was it?
Is there a school of thought where I know the Cowboys are going to have to make a decision on Dak's contract and extending that here soon, like they do with CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons and all that. But is there a school of thought that maybe they need to see Dak prove it in the playoffs before they get into that business with him?
You know, man, that's an interesting question that I tell people all the time, and I'm sure I've told y'all this over the years. If you want to move on from Dak, you can, okay? There's no problem. You could say he's 31 years old. History says if you haven't done it by now, you're not going to do it. For whatever reason, if you haven't done it by 31, and that's what he'll be when next season starts, starting his 9th year. If you haven't done it by now, you're not going to do it. So he's got 1 year left on his deal. You can't franchise him. You can't trade him because of his contract. What's the language in his contract? So you can move on if you want to, or you can let him play it out if you want to. If you let him play it out, he ain't coming back. And you say, well, how do you know that? Because somebody who ain't got no quarterback and ain't had no quarterback, New York Jets or somebody like that, Cleveland Browns, they will pay him whatever you think is stupid money. They'll pay it to him because they haven't had a quarterback. Now here's the problem: if you let him go, and again, if you want to let him go, you can let him go, man. The problem is there are no guarantees. Whoever you draft can play. And let's just use the number one. Say somehow the Cowboys trade for the number 1 pick overall. There's no guarantee that dude can play. You might get C.J. Stroud, or you might get Young. You might get David Carr. You might get Baker Mayfield. You might get Jared Goff. All them cats went number 1. Only one of them's a star. You might get Joe Burrow, or, maybe you're the Packers and you can go from Romo to Dak to whoever else you pick up. Or maybe you're the Cleveland Browns looking for your 28th quarterback in the last 30 years. Maybe you're the New York Jets who ain't had a legitimate franchise quarterback since Joe Namath. Maybe you're the Buffalo Bills who had to wait 20 years between Jim Kelly and Josh Allen. And so what I'm saying is you can get rid of Dak if you want to. That's cool. You have reason to if you want to go that way. Ain't no guarantee his replacement is going to be found in a hurry. And you can say, well, I just want to get worse. I'll just stick a Dak. Okay. It can get worse.
Jacques, who has had the more frustrating postseason resume, Tony Romo or Dak Prescott?
Dak ain't never dropped a snap to lose a game. So Romo still got the lead.
That's the field goal. That's right. Yeah.
Romo still got the lead, man. And Romo had 2007, 2014 were really outstanding teams. The Cowboys have had kind of 16, maybe 21, and this year were really outstanding. It's just been a lot of failure to make it happen. And now, I've told people this for a while, and now I think it's hard for the players to separate it, man. But, like, you know, Dak ain't responsible for 30 years of your frustration as a Cowboys fan.
Mm-hmm.
He's responsible for about 8 years. But the way it's talked about, like Mike McCarthy, he ain't responsible for 28 years of frustration. He's responsible for 4. But the way it's talked about, the way fans come down, the way media describes it in general, that can weigh on a player, on a team. Like, we're responsible for all of this weight. And you're really not. And you have to figure out a way to deal with it. And a lot of it is mental toughness. And you heard Dan Campbell talking about it last night in the Detroit locker room or after the game in terms of how they wanted to build their team and the type of mentality that they wanted because of the poop show that Detroit had been for more than 30 years.
Jacques Taylor, Dallas Cowboys insider, the book Prime, Deion Sanders. I've seen it on Amazon, HarperCollins. You can go and get it at a lot of places. And The Making of Men. You released that back in the middle of the fall. Of course, Colorado, one of the big stories, didn't end that well. Your story, you've known him since you covered him when he was with the Cowboys. Your thoughts about Coach Prime, what he's done at Colorado, and what the book is specifically about?
The book is about, I moved to Jackson and spent the 2022 season at Jackson State hanging out with him. So if you've got any interest in what he is as a coach, how he gets down as a coach, why he'll be successful at Colorado, this will tell you because he gave me complete access to the program. So I was everywhere talking to everybody, you know, in meeting rooms, at team dinners, all that kind of stuff. So it's a real unique look at him, at who he really is, not the primetime persona that you see. And ultimately, I think he'll win at Colorado. Ultimately, I think he will. He's got to get his coaching staff right because he's going to always be able to recruit a certain amount of talent once he gets started. But he's got to get his coaching staff right, man. And the other thing is, he really enjoys working with kids. That's why he coaches. That's why he got no interest in coaching in the NFL. He only wants to coach high school and college kids. But now, he hadn't told me this, although we've had a few just kind of casual conversations about it. I think ultimately, man, if he leaves Colorado, it won't be for another school. It'll be because he's tired of NIL and the collectives. Now, here's what I mean. Deion, and he draws a very distinct difference in what I'm about to say. He doesn't have any problem with players earning endorsements. So, you know, if the JJT Media Group wants to pay a player $100,000 a year to represent him, he has no problem with that. He says, hey, if somebody wants to buy your brand, more power to you. What he doesn't like is collectives who say, hey, here's $50,000 a year, here's $100,000 a year, here's $500,000 a year to play. He thinks that's pay for play, which he doesn't like. Endorsements he sees as different. But the way the game is going, if it doesn't get regulated in some way, shape, or form, now understand, I'm always for the players because you've seen this week what happened in Washington, what happened in Arizona. Coaches always do what's best for them. Even the great Nick Saban, who retired when, dog? After he got a recruiting class for Alabama one last time, knowing he was going to retire. So I'm always for the players. They just got to regulate it somehow, some way. Otherwise, I think Deion at some point will be like, you know what, this is crazy. And I feel for college coaches. There's no downtime, man. You're either recruiting, playing a game, or recruiting your own guys to stay before you bring a new class in. It's a grind. It's a beast. I don't know why anybody would want to do it.
Yeah, and there's something to earning it, right? From a guy like Deion's perspective. Look, when he was at FSU, he was the biggest player on the team, and people would have wanted to pay him for an endorsement. There's something I would assume, especially, and I think a lot of coaches and most people feel like this. Like, look, I'm all for you making money when you get here, but if you haven't done anything yet, I really don't feel like I need to pay you anything.
Well, there's something to be said for that, but my high school resume says I will do something. That's why you're out here recruiting me.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can work it both ways. I just think that they got to figure out how to get a handle on it, even if it's just changing the schedule around a little bit so that people can make decisions. But again, man, how do you feel if you're an Arizona recruit and that guy's been begging you to play something about loyalty, let's build something special with Arizona? You signed 2 weeks ago, and he's like, "Hey, I'll holler at you." I mean, it's been going on since the beginning of time. But now the players have some say in it, and all of a sudden, a lot of administrators got issues with it and want to control it and want to change it. But ultimately, man, I think Deion's good for college football. I think he brings an excitement to it because he's authentically himself. And that's what I like about Deion. He's always going to be himself. He's going to dance to a beat that only he hears, and he doesn't really care what you think about it.
Jacques, you, for many years, columnist for Dallas Morning News and elsewhere. Now you have your own business, the Jam Session, as far as your podcast. You've written books before, and including the one on Deion. Now you have the podcast, as I mentioned. How much fun has this transition? I know it didn't happen recently, but how much fun has the transition been, and how much more enjoyable is it because you kind of run your own thing?
Well, that's a great question, bro. I have a good time with it. I probably have more fun with it than I thought because I'm doing a lot of different things, and so I never get bored. There's always something to do. I'm working on a couple different projects right now, and so I enjoy that. I enjoy the challenge. Like I said, you start every month where you work for yourself, going, well, these are the clients I got lined up. Let's go see what I can hunt this month. And, sometimes you get a water buffalo and sometimes you get, a muskrat. But I like to hunt, and I'm having a great time, man. It's something to be said for controlling your life. And, this really started because I got laid off by ESPN Radio, and NBC5 basically in a 4-year period. And anybody who's been laid off before knows most of the time you get laid off. Why? Because you make too much money. And why do you make too much money? Because you're good. And so at a certain point, you just decide, I'm going to do something for me because I ain't going to never lay me off. and so I'm always going to make sure I got some vacation time. And so I just decided to bet on me, man. And it's turned out better than I thought because all of this is what led to the book project. And as soon as I finished that one, I had a contract for another book that I'm working on. I can't wait to tell y'all what it's about because it'll be just as good as this Deion book. And so I'm having a blast, man.
Thanks for your time. I just went online, bought your book. Can't wait to read it on Deion. Thank you very much. Jacques Taylor, again, with us on 365 Sports. And it was a great writer, and he also, as he mentioned, a part of ESPN. We have some super chats we need to get to. Earlier, Congo had the one about Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, Rich Rod in Michigan. Retired stockbroker, 365. For my little buddy, Mr. Pinkston. Kim Coulter, $4.99. I should have said this to Jacques. I used to email Jacques Taylor quite a bit when he was at the Dallas Morning News. He keeps it real. I love the guy.
I do too. He's one of my, when I started covering, when you came into my life and we started doing more Dallas stuff, he's one of the guys I've had a really great relationship with. I love Jacques. He's a great dude. I know that last week had to be rough for him as an Ohio State grad, and watching Michigan win is you probably feel like you have to take a shower after that. Maybe 2 showers a day until the season starts.
Go wherever Aaron Rodgers goes and cleanse your whole entire life.
Yeah, exactly. But I love Jacques. Happy to have him on the show today.
We have Paul's top 5 here in just 1 second. The 2023 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab, $15,000 below MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months, or the 2023 Ram $1,500 Lone Star Crew Cab, $12,000 below MSRP, or 2.9 for 72 months, plus some great opportunities on Jeep vehicles at Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84, and of course our great friend and sponsor, Allen Samuels with Ted T. This is 365 Sports and now the top
Time for
five.
Paul Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 Jedd Fisch replacements. Now, Jason Scheer kind of like burst my bubble on this one a little bit here. And I don't think that because, like, if you fire Jimbo Fisher in November, right, you have time to interview 5 guys. If Jedd Fisch leaves you on January 14th, you don't really have time to interview 5 guys. So you have to kind of zero in. But of 5 candidates, these are people I would think would make sense to some level for Arizona, and I didn't even include one of the ones that he mentioned. So we'll just race on through that point. Number 5, Ryan Grubb. Clearly a guy who's going to start getting some head coaching interviews and is not going to be at the University of Washington. He's probably going to, he's going to be the OC at Alabama. But, if you wanted a guy who's on the up and maybe could be a young coach on the rise like your rival Arizona State did with Kenny Dillingham, maybe Ryan Grubb is the guy that you need to bring in. I like the idea of him being a head coach. I just don't think he's on their list, but I do think he'd be a good fit for Arizona and a school like them. And maybe with a coach like that, they could possibly keep Noah Fafita.
You think he's going to leave Alabama? Even though it's a head
coach, yeah.
He should have just stayed at Washington unless that wasn't available to him.
He even said that they didn't offer it to him, so it wasn't going to happen. So, number 4, Cliff Kingsbury. Now, this would be in the realm of what they tried to do with Makovic, with Sumlin, and with Rich Rodriguez, in that somebody who has not had a lot of success, but people see a lot of potential in, like Cliff Kingsbury, they try to shoot some life into it. He has the big fun offense. He's got quarterback skins on the wall. He just hasn't won very much as a head coach where he's been, and it's maybe better to be settled as a coordinator, but given some of Arizona's past hires, this one would seem to make sense, and maybe that's the place where Cliff can spread his wings and be the Cliff that he fully thinks he can be.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a rumor or two about him. I think it was the Raiders, maybe. There was a talk about him interviewing for that. I've seen his name just thrown around for a lot of jobs. Don't quote me on that, but I was just searching through Twitter and saw his name mentioned for that. I don't like him as a head coach. I don't know why you couldn't do better if you're Arizona other than you're on a ticking clock. I would need to see more from Cliff Kingsbury to feel like, let's give him another shot at being a college head coach, because the last time we saw it, it wasn't very effective. So I get it, though. Like, big name, could probably be desirable to some recruits, fun offense, those types of things. I can totally understand why he'd be in the conversation, but for just me personally, I think he's got to work his way back a little bit more before I'd hand him the keys to a Power 5 job.
Yeah. I've also seen Scott Frost names that are around for this job,
but
I'm just not, I don't think that they're at that point. Number 3, Jake Dykert at Washington State. This is, he's done okay at Washington State. Now, they haven't had the kind of years that you thought, and they started out really well this year and then just didn't finish very strong. But he is someone who I think a lot of people and has an upward trajectory, and Washington State's in a really weird, spot right now with their conference. Someone I think who could go into Arizona and Tucson and do very well, but also someone I'll just tell you, based on what we hear from Jason Scheer, I don't think he's on this list. But if they were to hire Jake Dykert, I would rather have Jake Dykert than, say, Justin Wilcox, who Scheer said that they had interviewed for the job. That would just be my personal thing, but I'm not in charge.
Wilcox has a pretty good living at Cal. I think his salary's pretty nice.
Yeah, but I get it from anybody on the West Coast that's going to the ACC's perspective. This is not going to be fun for them. Winning games and all that, like, whatever. But the fact that everything you do is going to be harder than everything that everybody else does in the conference when it comes to logistics, those things are emotionally exhausting. But I do like Jake Dykert as a fit at Arizona if he wanted to go there.
It would be a good choice.
Yeah. Number 2, Barry Odom.
This is one I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think Barry Odom would be a great choice for anybody. I think he's a really good coach, and this is something that fits him. He's been at the Power 5 level. He's had success now at UNLV and appears headed on that upward trajectory. I don't know if he's a candidate for this job, but if you're going to go in the group of 5 and pluck somebody, he's had a lot of success recently, and he's recruited and been and coached at the P5 level in a lot of different capacities.
Yeah, he would make some sense. I mean, he's right there in that vicinity, being in Nevada now at this point, and did a really great job with the Rebs. Unfortunately, lost his quarterback. It looks like he's going to lose his wide receiver to some pretty big NIL money. But, no, he's done a good job for a very short amount of time, obviously. But I think it was enough to, definitely warrant kicking the tires on whether or not he is already deserving of another opportunity elsewhere. So, I think that's a name that Arizona should certainly take a long look at.
St. Dominic's Rosary. No, on Barry Odom. He was terrible at Missouri, but it's been a very nice surprise at UNLV.
I'll tell you what, though. That last year he had at Missouri, there were factors going on around him that were totally outside of his control.
Yeah, that was a lot of the tension on campus, correct?
Yeah, and so those are things like I'm going to give him a little bit of grace on that because things got weird in a hurry, and there were a lot of things that I don't think everybody understood were going on, and that was kind of at the first wave of something going on, not only in Missouri but in our whole country.
Yeah, I'll tell you this: if in fact Baylor was to have a coaching opportunity, if it would open, if the Orlando last whatever, I guarantee you, not sure he would be the person, but I guarantee you, Mack Rhodes would interview him.
Yeah, we had him on our show right after all that, and he was, I mean. I came away very impressed with that conversation in that sometimes it's very hard, especially for coaches being on a show, they had no idea who the hell you and I were. I mean, he has no idea who we are. We're just radio guys that got this interview with him. And he was candid to a level I respected that a lot of coaches don't do in the first interview out. Like he didn't give us we're just going to play Missouri football, that kind of stuff. It was really in-depth and intelligent, and I like Barry Odom a lot. I think he could do well at other places. Number 1. Brent Brennan at San Jose State. He was a finalist the last time around for this job. Has done a good job at San Jose State, although, that's again, kind of an up and down thing, but well thought of in circles as a coach on the rise. And again, almost got the job last time, when Jedd Fisch got hired, and it's not really been that long since Jedd Fisch got hired, and Brent Brennan hasn't done anything to change the fact that he might be qualified. And this is the kind of guy, a group of 5 guy coming up to the Power 5 that Arizona appears to have the budget for and what they're going to do. So I think Brent Brennan would be an excellent choice for them.
Don't know much about him. I watched San Jose State one night. I just happened to watch them on TV, liked the way they played, but I don't know enough about Brent Brennan.
Yeah, he's a nice offensive mind, all those things that he brings to it. I don't think he'd be much of a change from Jedd Fisch as far as philosophy goes. I think you can kind of hit the ground running there. But, again, it looks like the former defensive coordinator who's moved on to Texas might be the favorite, at least for the fans at this point, to keep everything together. Yeah,
to come back after just leaving.
Yeah, it's almost like with Alabama, they had a chance to keep Travaris Robinson. He ended up, I don't know if they could agree to what his position is going to be, DeBoer or whoever. He goes to Georgia, then Alabama goes, oh, wait a minute, we want to bring him back for a lot of reasons. One, he's an incredible recruiter. Caleb Downs, that alone. But they at least talked to him. He was interested but decided still to stay where somebody else wanted him more at the time. This is different because the kid, Nansen, who's in Austin, I would think even today, could be a head coach at a place where he has some roots in the ground.
Well, and look, he didn't know. Nobody knew that Nick Saban was going to retire, apparently, other than Jimmy Sexton. So
that would be interesting because Texas fans obviously loved the hire of Nansen when that was announced. What was it, late last week?
Yeah, no, there would be no spinning that as a non-loss, even though he hadn't been around long enough to do anything. That would be a loss just based on the way he was celebrated as a hire and what a good get that was. But, yeah, I mean, if all of a sudden the school you were just at, I mean, I doubt his house has even been cleaned out just yet at this point. They all of a sudden come calling and want you to have that big promotion, then who knows? All bets are off, I guess, in that case. But, yeah, I wasn't even thinking about him because this has all happened so quickly. But, yep, it's a respectable list. I'm sure there's some others that are out there getting the feelers out as well. But, yeah, Arizona's on the clock, so let's see what they do, and let's see what kind of a domino effect, if any, that then has on, some other jobs somewhere else as well.
All right, so they're starting the fourth quarter, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, 24-10 Bills in that crazy weather that delayed the game, the snow, but it seems like everything's going pretty much according to plan right now, but there's still time left. The Steelers have been a team that you've almost had to cut their head off to beat them. Buffalo's come back from a tough start with Josh Allen and what they do.
Well, Steelers score here. It's only a one-score game with plenty of time left. I'm totally bummed. The last 30 minutes or so since Terrell Bernard got hurt, I'm crushed for that young man. And getting X-rays, ankle injury, but needed to be carted off. And
that's never a good sign.
Replays, there's some people like, is that the bone break? Like that whole thing. And I haven't watched it. I probably won't watch it. I feel so bad for him and hope it turns out somehow to be.
Did not look good.
No, I know. But
yeah,
man,
just because we know the person and
great year.
And football-wise, Buffalo's got a 53-man or 50, whatever it is, but just I hate it for him as the person.
Well, he's left the game, and now you see the Steelers are actually doing something on offense. So, it's just a bummer in a lot of different ways. So best of luck to Terrell Bernard, and hope it's less than what it could be.
All right, Garrett, great stuff today, weaving in and out of everything. Jack McKenzie, Emery Winters working on 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the local CW. By the way, if you can and when you do join us, we appreciate it. Spread the word. Hit the like button when you possibly can, and also subscribe to 365 Sports and what we have if you have not. For Paul Catalina and for Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Thank you for your time today, and good night on 365 Sports.